Ones are the less touristic ones, but of course I try to be politically correct.
So now we have Fuerteventura, Lanzarote.
Well, it's just being pretentious.
Yes. So we all know what is it, Gran Canaria Island, and then it's Fuerteventura, Lanzarote, Tenerife.
Yeah. And then you have the small ones which are less commonly traveled, which is Las Palmas, Gomera, and then El Hierro. Which are
you went to
Gomera this time. Exactly.
I only go to Gran Canaria. I've been there 17 years in the straight. So. And then the most touristy place you can think of.
Maybe some adventure. Maybe next time go a little bit more adventurous.
I'm going to the same place every year with the same people and the same time.
Same Grisfest.
Same Grisfest.
Oh.
So that's my thing.
Right.
I love it. There's all good.
I could see,
I think I realized something.
But tell us about Gomera.
So Gomera it's 20,000 people living there. And it's the most mountainous of the islands. So there are many like sharp roads, dangerous driving, and a lot of small villages between the mountains, and a few beaches where you can swim, a lot of beaches where you can't swim, and a lot of Germans hiking in the mountains. So when we were there, the lady at one hotel was saying, like, are there any Germans left in Germany? Because it seemed like they were all there. All the hotels were full with German pensioners hiking in the mountains.
Did you have any specific things you were going for, like hiking or...
No, but right now we're just exploring all the islands. Okay. So after we have explored all the islands and all the relevant villages and so on, then we can sort of focus on activities. Okay, we like this valley.
So you're mapping out each island here.
Yes, exactly.
You're an explorer right now.
Exactly. Cool. We're just exploring all the different places and then realizing which ones are that we like the most for different activities. Because if you go surfing or if you go hiking, and so these are different places that you should go to.
But I loved your, logical reasoning about why you should go to Gran Canaria, and it's simply you hate, traveling. You hate going by planes too far, and if you simply want to go the quickest you can, the easiest you can, from winter times in Sweden to some kind of summer place, is just jump on a plane, go south until it's warm enough, and then jump off, and that's Gran Canaria.
Yeah,
right.
And how long does it take?
5 hours approximately.
5 hours flight. Yeah. And now let's see here. So what if I go straight out in the Atlantic? Okay, and then I go south. Like how far south are we? Gran Canaria is how far south?
I think it's approximately south of Morocco.
South of Morocco, yeah.
Yeah. So a little bit above the equator. Yeah. Quite a few hours.
Quite a few hours. But let's see. We have a couple of other islands around here that are. I mean, like you have
the Maldives.
No, but I was meaning in the neighborhood. Like you have Cape Verde. So what do we have in the Atlantic?
Cape Verde is much closer to the equator. So that's
Cape Verde is quite a few. But then you have what else? Isn't another island? I'm just highlighting alternatives.
Tenerife.
No, that's for me the Canary Islands.
Yeah,
and then, but you have Canary Islands is one group. And then way down,
so I think the Azores.
Azores, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, right.
So you have,
but that's it's a little bit further north. So much
Azores
colder.
is north, right?
Yes, it is.
So
and it's colder.
So you can.
They don't have any beaches, basically.
Ooh,
as far as I know.
So you can go there and think, I will take Azores. Azores. I can't say it. Azorerna. I would say in Swedish.
Yeah. And you would,
but it's more north.
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't be the same thing. You can't go really to the beach.
So,
and have the nice
but you just arrived back home from.
Yeah, 2 days ago. Yeah.
I was thinking about you. You looked very tan.
Yes,
so I was
yes. I was stayed enough days on the beach just to get the tan, so you can see that you're not being on vacation.
That's what all the Swedes love. It's so funny. I don't think there's maybe Norwegians, but we take pride in that, don't we? Especially in wintertime.
Norwegian, no.
But but who else more than Swedes have this as its maybe Europeans?
No, but there's a lot of Scandinavians there and a lot of Germans, and then the Brits love going there as well. But they love the touristic places. But they love the Grease Fest and lying on the beach, being hangover until 5, where they go to the pub and they listen to a cover band until 1 o'clock.
Yeah. Until 5, that's too late.
Okay, yeah, maybe they go to the pub at 3. Okay, so they lie on the beach 5 hours being hangover, and then they go to
even only 2 hours.
No.
And have you tried this, Josef? Like, did you ever even review it or?
No, No, I cannot really stay up that late, enough to be drunk.
Victor, do you have any favorite like vacation places?
Well, I'm going to Thailand actually, unfortunately.
Logical reasoning here.
2.5 weeks, but for the first time. So I'm not sure if that's my go-to place. Like when I was younger, I was quite questioning this traveling thing. So I didn't travel that much when I was around
for
my 20s.
For what reason? Like environmental or?
Like I was what's her name now?
Greta Thunberg?
Yeah, Greta, Greta kind of. And I think it was from school. Like we had this project, and then I suddenly became aware about the climate changes. So I stayed away from that, and then I met my partner, and then things happened. So we started traveling a lot. But I don't know. The States are nice, but I think Europe has some really nice places, and Sweden as well. So my go-to place is in Hälsingland. I have my cabin up there.
Oh, yeah. That's your angle.
Yeah.
Cool.
I would say.
In Hälsingland, so explain to someone who's not Swedish. So we're in Stockholm now.
Yep.
How far north do you travel, or do you travel northwest? Or
no, it's just north. It's in between north? Like this city Gävle and then Sundsvall. So like a 3.5 hour drive up north. Yeah,
but it's more or less north.
Yeah, it is. It's the southest part of Norrland, and so I'm Norrlänning, but depends on who you ask, of course. It's Norrland. Yes, it is. It is.
We had the autumn kickoff. Up there with the company in September, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we took all the company up to some place in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Speaking about Greta Thunberg, I mean, I'm not sure if you followed all the Twitter chats she's had, but she had a really big thing just a few weeks ago.
With that crazy person?
Andrew Tate, yes.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
No, but I heard that she'd made a snappy comeback or something like that. I don't know if that's true.
And then he suddenly came, he's in the prison now, right?
I don't think he's there anymore, but he was arrested, yes.
But was that related to her comments? No.
I don't know the details, but he made an attack on Greta, and she replied in a very snappy way. But then he actually got arrested, and he before he got arrested, he posted something on Twitter about some pizza boxes. And those I'm not sure if this is true, but potentially these pizza boxes were used to find him, and how they could actually arrest him.
Yeah.
And then she posted back like hours after he was arrested saying, you really, you see what happens when you don't recycle pizza boxes.
That's funny.
It's funny.
But she probably has a marketing team.
Maybe. Yeah. But that was really, really cool comeback for sure. Anyway,
she's a funny person.
I'm really happy to have you here.
Mm-hmm.
Josef Lindman Hörnlund. Lindman Hörnlund.
Yes.
And Viktor Öberg.
Thank you.
We've known each other for some time.
Mm-hmm.
At least I know you, Josef, and Modulai, of course. So I'm really looking forward to speaking more about in-depth AI things that I know you're very knowledgeable into.
Cool. Yeah,
I haven't met you before, Victor, but you know him from before?
No, I'm not sure if you met, but I know the whole story when you got recruited from Magnus. So
in spirit.
So in spirit, I met you. Yes, because I said hello to you today. We know each other from before, and yes, or is it Magnus storytelling that makes me feel I know you?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Yoga, Victor.
Yes.
And we're planning a bit to have a bit more focused theme to speak about here, and that is how should we phrase it, Henrik? You think is it about how really, or how would you phrase it, Henrik? Do you have a good phrasing for it?
I mean, I think Modulai. If we look at the Nordic market, or at least the Swedish market, Modulai was the first company in Sweden that came out in, was it 2017 or 18?
18.
And basically said, we're going to focus as a consultancy to put machine learning of the more sophisticated kind in production.
Yeah.
And that's all we're going to do. We're not going to be a BI company. We're not going to be a data company. We're going to be a model company.
Yeah.
And based on that, if I want to talk to someone in Sweden, what is our learnings of putting machine learning in production? As a consultancy, who has really done that as their main thing? There are not so many to ask. That has been through the journey that we kind of experience with Data Innovation Summit and everything. So for me, I would frame this topic, the ins and outs, the pitfalls and the do's and don'ts of succeeding with machine learning in production.
Yeah, I really love that. And I know some terms that we've used in the past to just differentiate between companies that say they want to use AI and be potentially data-driven, but they basically say, let's do a thesis project on this or some master thesis project and see what happens. And if it potentially works, then we can think about the next steps. And other companies that realize that you need to really invest heavily in making both the technology and people understand how to put this in production, and that it is a big difference between building a prototype and actually putting something in production. We had this kind of term called a prototype graveyard. I stole that, I think, from...
Frozen?
No, we invented it.
No,
shut up.
we GPT inspired us. But
right.
This is, I think, a term from, was it Lou? No, it was sorry.
I forget.
I know if you're listening, sorry for not remembering your name, but I saw a presentation that he had, and I stole that.
I recognize it as well.
But let me go even further.
Right,
now.
but I just wanted to jump into something that Anders said, is invest heavily, because we also have a very important point in how we do things, is that a big investment should not be necessary. So we try to do it as, in some sense, as cheaply as possible, in order to make proof of value with something that you can do in a short amount of time, which I think is very important, because there is this assumption that you would need a big data lake, or you would have all the different resources in order to make a machine learning organization work and so on. And our point is also sometimes to just do something that is providing value with the minimal resources in order to do that.
And this ties into something that we've talked about for many seasons here, over and over again, and we talked about it even on our Christmas special, where there's this misconception that you need to go up the analytical ladder, that you need to start with data and then reports, and then and analytics and BI, where you explore all the data, is a completely different use case to operational AI when you
usually a lot of waste of time, resources.
And typically the data architectures relevant for exploring a lot of data is not the correct data pattern, correct architectures for a machine learning, very narrow system that does one thing really well.
Right. So I usually make the analogy of building a car factory where you don't know what kind of cars you're going to build, and it's like no car company builds a factory like that. You don't know. It could be a truck, it could be a cabriolet, it could be a small car, a big car, whatever. You just build a factory first, and it doesn't work like that. You need to have an end goal. Yeah. And that's why you can sort of leapfrog this whole data lake paradigm, because you're just not going to put all your data in some place and then see what happens. But that's not how it works.
But to rephrase you a little bit, I would argue you need technologies from the modern data stack, but you don't need to get all data. You don't need to get everything you need.
So do it step by step.
You do it step by step, and of course, we are coming from the era of reporting. And if we think about it, when you roll up a whole enterprise into a couple of dashboards of the company, you kind of need to collect data from the whole company in order to get to a reporting style. So that is easy to think that you need all that.
Well, it depends on what kind of reports you're going to build, right?
Yeah.
The
management,
but the stakeholders usually say, we want all the data because I want to invest exactly this small details up there, maybe at some point. Yeah. But then they never do it. And then they have a whole data management department or data engineering department that builds a framework that can handle all these.
And clean and fixed hundreds of data sources when in reality there was a couple of...
So much money that goes down that drain.
Yeah, and there are use cases for performance management which are relevant and valid, but we're also highlighting now it's not the same trajectory when you go after one operational AI use case. It could be something completely different. And I think you've done some good examples of, let's not name names, but like someone wants to put cameras to understand the production line on a certain thing to have improved yield that makes lawn mowers in Sweden. Name no names.
Yeah, but I think we can name some companies, I think, and this was the manufacturing company. And just speaking to the effect of the analytical ladder and thinking that you have to organize all your data before you can have some value in your company of AI, this is a great example, I think, of why you don't have to do that. And in that case, simply had like a floor grinder machine. And
floor grinder, yes.
And they had a lot of domain experts using that, and at some point in time they could basically hear on the machine's sound that it's making a lot of weird sounds, and from that they can deduce that it's time to do some kind of maintenance on this machine, otherwise it will break down. Then the obvious conclusion or thinking is, can't we simply put some microphone on that machine, train some model on that, and then put that in production? And in that case it actually worked. It doesn't mean that they have to have some kind of centralized IT department that is collecting all the BI data before that. It doesn't mean that they have to have dashboards showing all the KPIs that they have in the company to do that. It could be the same team, the domain team, that actually were working on the maintenance of this specific floor grinder, and they by themselves could collect the data, take the model, train it, and put it in production, completely isolated from the rest of the organization.
And that's how we work. You carve out a good use case or business case that you can sort of make a proof of value and actually put it in production without having to touch too many parts of the company, right? Yeah. So and trying to find these use cases, that's a lot of effort, of course, because it's not all the use cases that are like that. But if you find these, then you can say, okay, let's actually build a machine learning product around this use case because it's feasible, it's not going to be too expensive, and we can actually make some proof of value in a short amount of time without a huge budget.
So now we're starting to frame this topic. We are talking about putting things in production, and we are talking about it doesn't need to be BI or data warehouse or the whole enterprise view on this. We're talking about putting one use case in production as one way of framing this, the ins and outs of that. Sure. I want to add I want to add two different perspectives on what I would like to explore today. One is adding the Google paper, the technical depth of machine learning, to basically talk about what do we mean with production. The model is, and to have a proof of value of the model is one thing, and you can do that cheap, but it becomes a little bit more expensive and more investment in order to really have this as a productionized system or even as a product, to productize this. So let's add that angle, and I'm not finished. Right. Okay. If I add Andreas,
I don't think so.
No. So this is the technical depth. So let's talk about production with the technical depth, but then we will also add the change management and organizational topics.
Good.
And then we take Andreas Lundmark from BCG, and I stole this 10-20-70 rule. They have to put everything.
It's an evolution of the 80-20 rule.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw it somewhere and it resonated with me, and it basically it's a very simple argument that says when you want to get value out of AI, real operational business bottom line value, 10% is about the model, 20% is about the tech stack. So now we have covered the Google paper. And then 70% is to secure that you have the right organizational setup, ways of working, governance and steering in order to actually adopt things and get things into value.
So I understand why that comes from BCG because that comes from big companies, where you have a lot of inertia. Where you have to move things and so on. And I think that what big companies need to do is really reduce those 70% to maybe 20%, because that should not be the case, right? That there is so much cultural change and so much inertia that needs to be moved in order to get value out of that.
But when we explore this now, let's explore the model, the tech depth, the technical depth, and the change management aspects, and then because if I'm going to frame my hypothesis to do this in production at value and then ultimately more and more at scale, in terms of not having one model, but actually in every single process we find our use cases and we get it done, I think this is more of an organizational problem than a technical problem. To go from orphaned AI to enterprise AI.
I'm not so sure.
Okay, this is the good discussion, and I really enjoy if we don't have. I
see your point, but please elaborate a bit here.
So that's the frame. So
right. No, but if you have a machine learning model for every kind of business problem that could potentially be a machine learning problem in a business, that's going to be a lot of models.
Yep.
And managing and monitoring and handling the data for all those models can be technically extremely complicated. So that's why I think that if that 10, 20, 70 rule continues when you start doing that, it will be completely impossible, because you really need to make sure that the organization can handle a new model with minimal extra effort, and then build a technical platform in order to actually have and maintain and monitor all these models. That's going to be the challenge. And if you're still at the point where that problem is an organizational problem, you will never be able to do it.
No.
But let me rephrase it a bit here.
Okay.
Yeah.
One, of course, is the hidden technical depth of machine learning Google paper from 2015, which basically says, it doesn't even speak about organizational change or change management. It just says that the model part of any AI system is like 5% of the whole system, and it's so much components around it to actually put it in production that is really the majority of the work to make something provide value. And that's one thing.
Yeah.
And it may be true. And I like what you said also partly, that it is probably true for the first model that you put in place. But as you continue to scale and can continue to use ML for other parts parts of the organization, you will not have to do the same work over and over again.
Yeah.
Right?
If you had to do that, that would be a really bad organization.
Then it wouldn't scale at all.
No, exactly.
The other part is, if you take organizational change, it's one thing to take the existing business processes that you do have. Let's take the maintenance problem of the floor grinder. That's not really changing the business process. It's simply optimizing the existing business process. And that's fine. And that's really valuable. And you can do a lot with that. But if you then move to use ML to actually change the way people work, that's a much bigger change.
Yeah.
That requires a significant organizational change and potentially a business model change to be able to do so. Mm-hmm. And that's two different parts. So if you start, and then the question is really, what should you start with? You could start with a simple case, yes?
I would think that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's usually a good idea. But you shouldn't fool yourself that if you want to make a true impact and make the whole company AI-driven, it will require more than optimizing existing business processes. You need to actually change what processes you do have and the business model of the whole company potentially.
But as an applied machine learning company, that's sort of out of scope for us.
Yes, exactly.
Because we don't do that. We do these simple use cases, and we say, this is a machine learning system or machine learning product that will solve your use case. And then how you use that and the changes that will imply for your organization, that's sort of up to you. Then you can use some strategy consultants or whatever you want to do in order to see that change happening. But we sort of step out of the picture at that point.
But I think this is a good framing. So if I summarize, putting the model in production with all the technical depths, exploring what it takes, to adopt something in existing, and then going all the way, if we are stretching ourselves, if we really truly think AI is a transformative technology, it kind of probably means more Elon Musk first principles ideas. Can we fundamentally rethink this way of operating or this operating model if we have a data AI first mindset on this, which is then we're getting we're getting to fundamentally reinventing operating models.
I'm not a visionary, so I wouldn't have anything to say.
You're humble.
So just comment about the technical debt, because I think there is a lot of things that we assume with technical debt. And technical debt is often something that we discover in hindsight, that or we should have done this differently, or we have this sort of data pipeline that didn't work like we expected, and you can go back and said, okay, we got this technical debt because we didn't do it the first time. But that's often a logical fallacy in some sense, because you have new information and you know things now that you didn't know then. So you say that, okay, we got this debt because we did something wrong, but that's not true. You see this technical debt in hindsight. So you need to do it first. And it's always like unknown unknowns and known unknowns that you need to explore. And in order, so technical debt is not something that you get it on purpose because you know you're going to do something that will consequences that you cannot foresee. But that's not the same thing as saying that you could have avoided them from the first time. I think that's...
I think, let me see if I can... It's also a little bit like, if I put my words on that, you simply need to learn by doing. And it's very hard to jump steps here. So not until you have a model that you understand how it really works, do you fully appreciate how the training data set and how the whole production system should work. Mm-hmm. Because if you realize, I need 10 data sets, it's very different if I need 2 data sets, as an example, right? Or the complexity, how you need to organize the data for the deep neural network to work.
And that's what we often see in organizations that we work with. They sort of like realize what machine learning is all about when they see the model in production. Because then they say, oh, this is how it works. Yeah. And that's, I think, one of the important learnings that we see with a lot of customers. Sort of, it's very much a journey. In order to say ML and AI is something very abstract, something you read about in newspapers and you hear about and so on. And then when they actually see used in their own organization, they are sort of, it clicks. Sort of, this is what it actually does.
Yeah, and it's also this value about doing things, right? Because if you plan and you have your transformation idea, which is starting, there's easy to just plan and about this transformation, but also what you mentioned, Josef, like throughout the, 12 weeks of MVP development, you learn so much and you gain so much, but by those learnings, instead of waiting 12 weeks and then do something, like the value of trying, maybe failing or succeeding is also maybe not numbered at in terms of value, but the knowledge you gain from these projects.
The value of failing is surprisingly high.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. But I would argue now that we're almost immediately with that comment, Victor, touching some profound learnings. To go into becoming more data AI driven, can that really be viewed as a transformation? Or is it some sort of more, I'll try to find another word, is it a migration? Is it sort of learning by doing and stepwise? But what I'm trying to say is, like, if you can't really plan, like old school, we want to plan and project, we want to have the business case, and I want to know before I start exactly what I'm going to build, and I want to know exactly how it works. And you just threw that out of the door in your last comment. You said, forget it. You don't know until you really, you need to get to a certain point until you fully understand the technical depth. And I would argue it's the same with adoption of AI models in production. If I'm changing users' way of tackling a problem when he has data to rely on. Mm-hmm. So what I'm trying to say is that the way we looked at assays to be gap analysis, transformation, project management, like a management consultant would like to do it, does it really work like that when you look at your projects?
So I think what I'm hearing is it's a lot about risk mindset, or your idea about risk and how the organization can take risk. Because if that manager that says that I need to make sure that the business case is worth this amount of money, that's just risk minimization. They don't dare taking the risk. And to become a thriving business, you need to take risk. I mean, there's a huge difference between small companies and big companies here that I think we often talk about enterprise AI and in an enterprise, you sort of have this risk aversion embedded in the organization, which is probably a big part of that 70% that you're talking about. Yeah. Because we are working a lot with smaller companies like startup, and they have risk as part of their nature. I mean, being entrepreneurs is taking risk. So for them, these organizational changes, it's so much easier to get through in the organization because they see like shit hitting the fan every week. so another model failing or something like that. It's so.
I think that's a really interesting topic. Actually, add that to the list. The difference between how startups works, how enterprise works, and why enterprise potentially could learn something from startups in being more innovative. And simply, you have a long journey of working with a lot of companies, and simply if you can give some examples of when it worked and also when it didn't work, I think that would be so interesting to hear more about.
I like that.
Right.
Yeah,
sure.
Like that.
And I have some examples.
And that's especially going back to the original theme, which I guess we could frame as something about what makes ML systems and projects to succeed or fail. And simply see, can we find some kind of learnings or from all your experience that you had in Modulai, etc. But before we go into that, I think we need to make a bit of an introduction at least to the people and the company as well.
Right.
So perhaps we can start with you, Josef. Who are you? Can you give a short, brief introduction to?
Yeah. So I usually start at university.
Yes.
I went engineering and physics at Chalmers University in Gothenburg.
Yes.
And I did a master's in mathematical physics. I thought I was going to be an academic.
Yes.
So I continued with a PhD in string theory or mathematical physics.
Yes.
I spent 3-4 years doing pen and paper calculations about black holes.
Black holes specifically. Interesting.
Yeah. Classifying black holes in string theory.
Not rabbit holes.
No. Well, it is a rabbit hole, of course, but it's
building on Hawkins, like.
So Hawking has some basic results, sort of but we went more into pure mathematics. So I spent most of my times just doing abstract math. So Lie groups and algebras and differential geometry and so on. And then I realized that the academic career was perhaps not for me. It's a really tough career. So being an academic is a lot tougher than going into industry. And
before we move away from the academic career and also physics in general, because it's like an amateur interest of mine as well. And you said string theory was one of the focus areas you had. Do you have any thoughts about when we will reach some kind of theory of everything results?
No. So
what is theory of everything?
Right. No. So let me restrict that because I think that what people are working on right now is quantum gravity, which is the closest aspect of theory of everything that we sort of have. It's combining quantum field theory with general relativity.
So just for people don't understanding, we have two major theories. One is quantum mechanics. The other is general relativity.
Which is gravity.
They are not, which is gravity, and they're not compliant, basically, right?
Exactly. They're not exactly. You cannot. Basically, the problem is that you cannot treat the theory of gravity in the same way as you do other forces like particles.
There are 4 forces in general, right?
Right. Yeah. So you have the strong force, the weak force, and the electromagnetic force, and then the gravity.
Yes.
And gravity, you cannot quantize it, and that's a huge problem because you think that at some point gravity and particle physics should be compatible, and particularly that happens close to black holes. In order to explain black holes fully, we need to understand quantum gravity or quantize gravity. Have a quantum mechanical understanding of gravity, and we don't have that. And that's basically what string theory is about to solve, and what people are working on. I think that's a huge point right now.
You think string theory is the solution?
No. And I think also most of my favorite string theorist, Edward Witten, he also has
it's the many worlds interpretation, right?
No. That's an old physicist.
But he actually popularized it.
No, Witten, I don't think he has been open about interpretations of quantum mechanics. So Witten is probably the most famous string theorist, and he has been hugely influential in establishing theory. He invented M theory, for example, which is string theory is actually just one part of that theory of everything, where M theory is another part also. And he created all this stuff. And he should have received the Nobel Prize if he had been lucky enough to be born in a time where they still discovered new theoretical physics, which we haven't done for 50 years in some sense. It's just Higgs, but they established that in the 60s. So since the Higgs, nothing has happened. So he's a bit unlucky. And he has also sort of, I think in some sense, moved away from thinking that string theory is the final answer, because it's still too naive. And the theory of everything is actually going to be something more crazy than string theory, which is, I think, crazy in itself, because string theory is fairly crazy as it is.
Or quantum mechanics is very crazy.
Yeah. But so my favorite physicist right now is a man called Arkani Hamed, and he has these ideas about how space-time does not exist, and how everything is emergent, and locality is an emergent property of space-time, and all these things.
So you still keep up in the field, or?
Yeah, but I try to read some papers once in a while, just for.
Have you read about Eric Weinstein's? What was it called? Geometric unity or something. I think he actually has a proposal that he doesn't like string theory. He has another theory of everything solution, which he calls something like geometric unity or something.
Can we Google it, Google?
So there are many alternatives to string theory. Like there is topological quantum gravity, I think. Maybe that's a loop quantum gravity.
Loop quantum gravity.
Maybe he's in that camp. I don't know.
No, he doesn't like that.
But okay.
What's his name?
Eric Weinstein.
No, I don't.
No.
So it's.
This is. I'm sensing rabbit holes here.
This is
black holes returning rabbit holes.
Yeah, but it's highly fascinating. Sort of just the thought of thinking that reality is probably so incomprehensible for humans that.
But let me, because I'm sorry, this is a bit of a rabbit hole. But still, for me, I have my own personal theory. I'm not going to tell you about it right now. We can do that after the podcast. But
sure.
Still, I do not believe that quantum mechanics is the truth. It's the best model we do have, of course, for understanding the micro world that we do have. No question about that. And it's insanely precise in being able to predict the world of atoms, etc.
Right.
However, there are. I remember Eric Weinstein. He once, he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he spoke about a lot of things there. Okay. So there is. That's why I listen quite a lot on that. And he made a really good analogy. And that was basically, if you think quantum mechanics in general, of course you have the uncertainty principle and entanglement that you have to deal with somehow, and then the qubits then in a quantum computer that is potentially able to be much faster than a normal computer, which I have a lot of reservations about as well, but we can speak about that another
time. You're not very original in that.
You're lining up rabbit holes here.
I know.
What's your point, Anders? What's your point?
Okay, good. Thank you, Eric. I think he made a great analogy that I liked, and then he said, it's not necessarily that crazy to not be able to know the position and the momentum, for example, of an atom or electron at the same time. That's not very strange. And normally it is. I mean, you should be able to know either the particle is there or it's not there. And that's a really weird thing in quantum mechanics, that it says, you cannot know that. And then it said, tell me the position of a wave on the water. And he said, basically, there is not a single position. That there is a wave where we have a long line of the position.
Okay.
And that's why you basically have a distribution of the positions rather than a specific point.
I think that analogy is simplifying things until they are not relevant anymore.
Okay.
So you have all of these analogies about quantum mechanics. Of course, you say that, or you try to make all these kind of things. And so maybe that's true. And I don't think the uncertainty principle is a sign that quantum mechanics is wrong or not the final answer in some sense. But if you would take this space-time is emergent perspective, which I mentioned before, then you would say that if the position and momentum is just emergent properties that are sort of showing up at some scale, then that those properties are sort of approximating something else, then you would get the same kind of behavior.
I like that. I'd like to hear more about that at some point. Perhaps after some beers in the after work.
Yeah, this is definitely a beer topic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Sorry. So after you went into math and physics, and then you continued in some way after that. What happened? After that?
So I realized that the academic career was not for me. So then, and when I did my PhD, mathematical physicists, they were not going to Silicon Valley. They were still going to Wall Street.
Yes.
So I started
being a quant.
Exactly. Yes. And all the people that graduated before me that skipped academia, they went to Wall Street. So I started studying option theory and stochastic differential equations and that stuff in order to sort of prepare myself for those tough interviews. And then I applied for a job at Klarna, sort of naively thinking that I was applying for a quant job. But then I realized that it's actually a data science job that I applied for. Right. And sort of, I'm going to do machine learning. And so just coming in through a banana peel, exactly, in that field. And when I joined Klarna after my PhD, we sort of were on the cusp of moving from classical data analytics and, machine learning before it was machine learning with logistic regressions and so on. And then we made the transformation as I was there into machine learning. It was 2012, AlexNet and deep learning and stuff like that. So I sort of entered into machine learning field a little bit like not realizing what I was doing. And then I have been doing machine learning since then.
Awesome. Do you think the mathematical background is a good entry point for a machine learning career?
So I'm a little bit biased, but I think a mathematical background is good for everything. My recommendation is you should always start with a bachelor in mathematics.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, whatever you're going to do in life. I think that's the best start.
So, and I'm
or
sure
STEM fields in general, perhaps. I mean, STEM in terms of
but I think that should definitely go for people going into business and economics as well.
But and how do you then see it? You can. I remember when I went to gymnasiet, you could do economics to get less math, and then you could go to
but that's
techniques.
That's so wrong,
isn't it?
Awesome, and we should move back to the topic, but. I'm also thinking, we need to know more about the story about Modulai and how it
started. Let's do Viktor quickly.
Exactly.
Let's do Viktor quickly.
So,
Viktor, give me your story.
Yeah. So when I reached out to Goran about joining this again, we've been here before, which is great. I was thinking like, okay, how can we make the spiciest out of this? So we brought the smartest of us all in Josef, as we now know, and then we brought me. so yeah, I'm. How do you top that introduction, Josef? But yeah, my background is a bit different from Josef's. I come from the music scene, and then I did yoga. And then I studied at Hyber Island at quite a mature, I don't know if you say a mature age, but I was in my late 20s when I went to this school named Hyper Island, and then they had this course, AI Business Consultant, and I applied for all the courses that I thought sounded interesting because I knew that I knew that the methodology at the school was something that was interesting for me. And then when I got this letter of approval, then it said AI for business consultants. And I was like, ooh, okay, cool. Yeah, let's try it. So I did.
But you also have a background in music, right? And just to give you a short background, because it's been surprising throughout the seasons that we had in this podcast, how many people that has a background in music. I wanted to have a background in music, but I'm horrible at it. Henrik is really good, Goran is really good, and so many other people that we have here that are experts in data science have a musical background.
And I'm a musician too.
Yeah.
Really?
What do you
I'm the only one that doesn't have it.
I have actually released an album.
So, but you ever played with Eric?
Touring.
Have you played with Eric?
Yes. I actually had a concert at Trädgården. a few years back.
You and Erik?
Yes.
So cool. Him on keyboard and what
but that was such a horrible experience. Because I said that I don't dare go on stage alone, because I do my music myself, and I sing and I play and so on. And I say, I don't want to play a Trädgården myself. So I asked Erik, would you join me on stage? And he said, yeah, happily. And then can we practice? And then we didn't practice. So I sent him the songs like the day before. And he was like doing some chords. And I think it was I think it's a horrible experience for him. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
So you compose and you also play the piano a bit or keyboard?
Yeah,
or you have
the one finger waltz. Yeah, exactly. But I like electronic music. I was listening to Kraftwerk and all this stuff. And you sit with your machines and you. So
are you one of the synthesizer nerds that is sort of getting into the vintage stuff still?
Italian disco.
But let's not talk about me. Let's continue with Viktor.
And Viktor, what's your background in music?
I can play the T-Rex piano.
The T-Rex
piano?
Yeah.
And then, but I've released 2 albums.
Oh.
So yeah.
Can we find them on Spotify?
Yeah.
Okay. But I threw in my PhD thesis.
But you both sang, right? And you wrote songs? And you produced, or what was your musical background?
I studied music at the gymnasium, and then I studied 2 years at this Swedish folkhögskola that we have here. Yeah. And then I started to play in this band, and I did that for like 6 years, I think, playing live and
Which was this band and what type of music?
The first band was like this folkhögskole funk. I don't know if you heard that genre before, but it was funk. And then we played that for a couple of years, and we realized that this is never going to fly. And then we had a producer, and he said like, okay, maybe you should do it a bit more like commercial. And then it was still in Swedish, like we sang in Swedish. And that's a really hard business, like to success as Swedish, especially like a band. We were 6 people, and then when you start, if you didn't do your bachelor in maths, you can still realize that, if you're 6 people and then you're gonna play live in Sweden,
split the margin.
Split the margin in 6, and like the travel costs, and it's
you have to go to dance band music, then we'll make some money.
Yeah, and we didn't want to go that path. So but it was a great journey, and I'm so grateful for that.
Have you been composing, producing, or singing, or what has been your
all of
what
that.
you love? What you love yourself? All of it.
All of it. Singer at first, I would say that's my core thing. But writing,
But you also have a background in yoga, right?
Yeah.
And we're interested in it. How did that get started?
Well, I've been a student of yoga since my early 20s. And then I've fooled some people at the company also to start with this practice.
I think everybody at the company has turned into yoga.
Yeah, right?
Yogis, yeah?
Yeah. But I think it's the combination of the physical practice, the mental and the breath, and then also the spiritual part, which is maybe not, it's not a religious spiritual path, but it's just this connection to yourself in a way, which I had never experienced before I practiced yoga. I'm a sports guy from my youth, but that was the first.
I can certainly appreciate the mental side, because I do meditation, every day basically.
Yeah.
But how would you say? What's the core or the main pros, so to speak, of yoga? What do you gain? What happens if you don't do yoga?
Yeah, I think like we're in a society which is a lot about performance all the time. You should perform this and that, and when coming back to business, you're having your ROIs and you want to have the most value out of things. But and yoga was that for me as well in the beginning. Like perform, how can I do these different positions in a way that looks nice on Instagram and things like that. But then I realized with time that it's not about the performing part of it. It's about the experience. And if you can take away all the performing out of it and solely focus on the experience, then it becomes something completely else. So that's the practice for me today, to have a pause from life, like, but that is life, kind of experiencing things like this also, like experience this moment of not feeling that I need to perform in some kind of way.
So what do you get? I mean, for me, if I just speak about myself, I can certainly see the purpose of zoning out, so to speak, from the normal rhythm of the life, so to speak, and finding some. But for me, it's basically about trying to find some kind of internal calm and focus.
Yeah.
And for me, at least, that's if you don't practice that quite a lot, you will not be good at doing that. And it requires a lot of practice to be able to find that. Would you agree, or what's the...
Yeah, I think, like I definitely think that you become more efficient by practicing this thing. And I definitely agree with the calm, like finding the silence comfortable.
Yes.
Only that is...
But aren't there a little bit different schools of yoga as well? So you have more strengths enhancing yogas, more meditative types of yogas. So have you any preferences here?
Now I teach both quite physical practices.
Is that Bikram or something like this? What is it called?
Bikram, Vinyasa is the sun salutations and combining the breath with the move, kind of. But then I also appreciate very, very still practices such as Yoga Nidra, which is you just laying on your back and then you do some body scan and you are just...
Yoga Nidra should be for me. Yeah.
If someone were interested in trying this type of yoga out, what would be your main tips? Besides, joining you or your company, can they do some practices at home?
Yeah,
get them a small...
There's a lot of things on YouTube but I think I think the best way to start the yogic journey is to join like a foundational course, because it's kind of if you played football when you were a kid, you went to a lot of trainings and you practiced and then you played a game or a match, and with yoga it's kind of you're directly jumping into game mode. And then you don't really know what to focus on, how to breathe.
So all you need some kind of course to get started.
You don't need it, but it shortens the kind of your leverage in the practice, I would say. So that's my tip. Join a course.
I haven't taken a course, but I have my white elephant practice. I will not go into this. But let's keep that.
I have a good one. We went to some summer holiday place somewhere. I think it was in Greece. It was in Greece. And there was like at this hotel and they had different activities. And here's my kids, my wife, and I was like, I'm going to go to this yoga practice now. And I'm an old football player and I'm probably one of the stiffest guys that you can find. And here I am trying to now find the moment and, do the yoga. And here I then turn over and see my 3 kids, lying down on the floor, laughing their heads off. So sort of, I have a long way to go. Yeah, but they had fun. They roasted me hard.
That's why when you start with yoga, it becomes a performance thing. Yeah. Because at first you feel
so awkward. You feel so awkward.
It's just a training, like adjusting your body and so on. And when you're past the cusp, I think, then you can think of those more mental and meditation aspects. Yeah. So you need to.
So that was almost like my point was like I've been wanting to do it, but I felt so conscious about my performance, I guess.
But yoga it feels a little bit like this Söder sourdough things. It's so hip right now. Everywhere you go, people are just talking yoga.
Yeah, I mean, we should stop it immediately. Shift the topic.
It is a problem, I would say.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah.
Before you joined Modulai, and we have that a separate topic shortly, but you also co-founded a number of other places, right?
I've started something called the AI Think Tank.
What's that?
AI Think Tank was an idea, creds to Peter Kurzweili at AI Sweden, about having a community kind of time for leaders within businesses to discuss AI by bringing in guests and then having 20 minutes of topic and then 20 minutes of breakout rooms where you discuss different challenges you have, and then a bit of questions and answers kind of. So that is still going on.
Is it a non-profit kind of thing? Or
yeah, it's more of a student-driven thing. So it was like when I graduated, we passed it on to the next course, and now it's the next course. And
so were you and Peter in Hyper Island together, or how did you meet Peter? Or was this?
No, it was through. I guess I'm good in networking, but I met Peter through AI Sweden for some reason. I can't really remember how we met, but
I thought you meant when it was a student thing that it originated from Hyper Island times.
It did, yeah, it did. But it was like this Hyper Island and AI Sweden now have some kind of partnership together. So it was like in the this was also the first time they did this kind of course, and I think it was the first course in Sweden also, like this AI business consultant.
All right.
So where were we? Yeah. So that thing, and then A-Frame I was a company we started for. We did a project with the city of Helsingborg. And then about the same time, I gave this yoga for machine learning engineers course at Modulai through Magnus. Yeah,
I love it. I love the title here.
Yes, I do.
Yoga for machine learning engineers. Oh my God, that is niche. That is niche.
Right. We should do more of that.
I would like to hire you directly.
Oh my God, it went straight for the jugular. I love it.
Yeah, so I had this course.
And you called it like that. It's so funny.
Yeah. We did, and we did it for a couple of weeks, I think. And then when it was time for me to do my internship, I reached out to Magnus, and then I ended up staying there, and then I've been there since then, kind of.
It's just the best class title.
That was the story.
It's a very straight line. How to start working?
Very straight. Yeah, sure.
Awesome. So
interesting. So funny.
Let's move to the Modulai story. So perhaps you can start, Josef, and speak a bit about the origins of Modulai.
Right. Yeah. So it was founded by me and Puya Sharif and Erik Dahlberg in 2018, and I think we were all like having discussed different business ideas for a couple of years, and we were in a situation where we wanted to do something new. And back then, and I think it's actually still the case, it's very hard to find good jobs as a senior machine learning engineer. We don't really have this individual contributor track in Sweden, so you end up being in management. And I had a job where sort of I was in a suit and just in meetings, and we just said, let's actually start a consultancy. That's the easiest thing to do. Mm-hmm. And then we wanted to focus on doing something that we enjoyed and thought we were good at, and that we would learn a lot from.
So what you're saying is at Klarna, when you got more senior, and
but I actually had moved to another bank from the.
Okay, but when you become more senior and knowledgeable about this, then you move into a more managerial position to recruit people and shape teams. But you actually enjoy the craftsmanship.
And I think and this is something that I am very, very convinced of. You need to have a playing coach. Mm. And by that, I mean...
I agree with that.
But that, I mean, and you cannot really, in a so technical subject as machine learning, you cannot really go into machine management and stop doing things, because you will become irrelevant in 1 year. Mm. Because you will, back in the days we were doing things like this, and it's not really, it doesn't work.
It's obsolete. It's not.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't even say irrelevant. Just obsolete.
And that's why you need to be a playing coach. You need to be on the field. You need to spend time coding. As a technical leader, you can never stop coding.
I like it.
But I
think that's another T-shirt.
No, but I've used that in the keynotes and in the ending keynotes, like the ending slides of the keynotes at the Innovation Summit. I have proclaimed that at least 2 or 3 of the conferences, this game of succeeding with data and AI and taking it more at scale will happen and will be won at the player coach level. Yeah. So if you don't have the player coaches, and then I've taken the analogy of how do you win Champions League, right? It's you need to have the right coach who really understands this and can know the game, and he can talk upwards and downwards. But if you don't have the player coach who can't shape and who doesn't relevant, I find it really, really hard to become data AI driven if that mindset and if this is not understood and valued.
So and the number of companies I would say in Sweden where they have mindset, where they have understood it's a very small amount of companies. Few. And which is why you need to become an entrepreneur.
Now we can park this, because now we're talking about pitfalls and successes of putting things in production, and the player coach dimension I think we should discuss. Because now you say it, but why is this
Let's
so
add
important?
a topic about something about building a team and having the proper leadership in place or something, right?
And I really like to emphasize and use the player coach. I love that heading, by the way. I think that's something we need to push. I was really, really good that you said that. It's exactly like that.
Cool. Okay, so you got to some point where you said, let's start a new business.
Right, and we went with consultancy company because that's we didn't have any really product idea in order to do something about, and we said that we can create a lot of value by being consultants. But then we wanted to do it in our own way. So we focused on applied machine learning, deploying things in production, being really business value driven, because I think that's the key. We can talk about data-driven or model-driven or everything like that, but it all boils down to business value. You need to show business value in order to do something valuable. And then the model and the data and so on comes in as you go along. And we really wanted to do that. So we started up. We had a lot of...
Did you have a customer to start with, or what did you do in the beginning?
Yeah, we sort of... we had a lot of...
Could you continue work with Klarna?
No, yeah, we have tried that. We had a lot of connections there, but it's not really a company that use. Okay, no. So part of why we wanted to go into this field was also to go away from finance. Yeah. So I'm a little bit of an I have worked a lot with financial machine learning, in the sense of banking machine learning, building models for banks, and we wanted to get away from that a little bit. So we had a big project with FishBrain. The first thing we did to make a model for predicting where to go fish if you're an amateur fisher, and we started working with EQT and MotherBrain.
Right.
So you work with the MotherBrain setup?
Yeah, we were
Wilhelm and Henrik. So Wilhelm was actually
joining our team when we were working at Klarna. So he's sort of our.
So he went. It comes back to me now. He went that way. You went that, and then he called us.
Yeah, exactly. So we made Wilhelm, who is straight.
Wilhelm, did you hear that?
We had him on the show, of course.
I think he will agree.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that's cool. And MotherBrain is a cool project, by the way.
Right, and we were part of that in the beginning, which was a really big part of how we managed to start. We had a lot of some other projects, and then we brought in Magnus maybe in the first year and started recruiting, and we had Emil Larsson, which was also a Klarna person that joined the company in the first year.
So a lot of Klarna people there, right?
So it's like
in the beginning we were four Klarna people.
It's actually 4 Klarna founders, right? Ex-Klarna founders, right?
Yeah,
could you say
that? Yeah, sort of.
And some Peltorian people as well.
It has joined now.
Right?
Right. We took some Peltorian.
Yes.
I can remember, was that a thing when you were back in Peltorian that you was like, they stole our,
No,
we had a good collaboration.
Good collaboration. Okay, flip it. Good collaboration.
We were official partners, I think.
Yeah, we were. Didn't really turn into money, but it's marketing material.
Marketing.
Yes. Okay, exactly. Cool. So that's the origins of Module AI. Is that the proper pronunciation?
So it's actually Modulai.
Modulai.
And
you should know this.
He makes it a joke. We all know it's Modulai, but he was asking Eric and Magnus, is it Module AI?
So the concept is from
you're just being fucking difficult.
In differential geometry, you have a concept of a moduli space.
Is it spelled like you spell it?
No. You have to add the A, so you get the artificial intelligence.
Of course.
Right.
So how did the name come about?
Yeah, we just brainstormed a lot of different names, and it's sort of like,
and it had
sounds good.
More cool names that we can end with AI.
Exactly.
Of course. I think it's of course one of the best AI consultancy companies out there with so many awesome people in it. So I'm very glad to see that this has succeeded so well as it has and grown. So how many people now?
We are 20 people right now, not including interns and masters. I think we're 25 including interns and masters. Yeah.
But I have, to start wrapping up also about Modulai and moving into the theme. But I have one last question. How is it going nowadays with the product ideas? You said you started consulting because you didn't have any product ideas when you started, but all people I know that they're dreaming about the product breakthrough. So where are you now on this?
Yeah, of course we are as well. So before I came here, I was working on a pitch deck for a product together with Puya.
So
of course we're dreaming about that as well.
scoops?
And you can spill all the details here now.
No. But
more beer. Get some more beer.
But I think that somehow I have grown into the realization that consultants are actually needed, and especially expert consultants, because my main argument for why we as a consultancy firm provide value is that when you spend money doing a machine learning project with us, you actually get a machine learning system in production cheaper than if you would have done it with someone else.
But I think this is a good topic. So let me try to phrase the question then. Why should a company speak to Modulai or some consultancy company? What is the benefit of taking assistance, so to speak, from a consultancy company?
Right. And I usually compare this with how people build e-commerce sites. So when you go out as a company right now and you do an e-commerce site, you don't hire a computer science student and say, build an e-commerce site from scratch for me. No. And then they okay, let's use Haskell because that's cool. I learned that at university. And then they started like, let's code a database in Haskell. That's not how you build an e-commerce site. You hire experts. Because people that actually have done it before and they can do it quickly and they know how to do it, and then you get it.
And they even have tool sets or even half-made OEMs things to start from, so you don't even have to start from scratch.
Exactly. But in machine learning field, or as it has been over the last 5-10 years, is that somehow in machine learning it's okay to hire that machine learning student from university and say, build a machine learning system from scratch and learn all the mistakes and do all the stupid things that you do because you have never done it before. That somehow has seemed okay in machine learning. A lot of companies do it like that.
Yes.
And
this is actually one of your pet arguments. How do you talked about it on the Christmas special? How do people think they can get anything out of that when you do it like that? We hire the master or PhD student for 3 months to do a POC, and then we'll see what we do with it.
Yeah, which is, I mean, you would never do that in any other field. Yeah. So why would you do that in machine learning? No, exactly. When you build an e-commerce site, you hire experts and they can build it for you. They use Shopify or whatever they want to do it, and you get. And you pay consultants, and then maybe you can do it with some computer science student that can maintain it or learn as you go and so on. And that's what that's the value we provide. We take this. It's not Shopify, maybe it's DVC or Kubeflow or whatever it is, but actually we can build that for you. And then you can you can use your e-commerce site as you want. You can use this machine learning system as you want. So that's why it becomes cheaper.
But
we have done it.
Okay, there are several rabbit holes here, and maybe.
I think Anders' list of all the topics will be. We will just end this podcast with a huge list.
That's how the AI after work runs until 2:00.
All right. Yeah.
The after work. I mean, yes. I don't know if I want to. I want to park a topic here. Maybe we shouldn't go into it because I have made some sort of observation how the Swedish market has worked. Coming out of BI, we move into data warehousing, and then self-service BI, and now we're going to go into advanced analytics. And all of a sudden here, we end up with people who hasn't really a software engineering or a really hardcore background that is sort of slowly have drifted into machine learning, but they don't really know all the ins and outs of how to build systems. And typically, it's another angle of hiring that student is that we have people who are, I would argue even a data warehouse is a business application that you configure more than really hardcore software engineering. So I don't know. So I've tried to sort of understand, the people who have sort of got latch on these topics in the big corporations. Are they the right people who has sort of got a hold of it?
No,
that's a very provocative question. Don't want to
comment. No, but yeah. And I think this is something that I actually think a lot about. How much statistics do you need to know in order to become a machine learning engineer or a data scientist? And or math or something like that. And to me, it's a tough thing. Because I think that understanding like just model validation without the profound understanding of statistics, you're going to fall into traps, exactly. But in some sense, that's also fixed a little bit by all these off-the-shelf models and standard techniques and tools and so on. So I don't really know what I think.
But it's also scary that we are using things that is very, very powerful, but we don't really know what we're doing with it. It's
right,
the risk,
but that's
right?
the human condition, I think.
Yeah, that's a human condition.
So it's something that happens. As long as you get business value out of it, you're fine. You don't need to be mathematically consistent or know all your large number limit theorems and so on in order to use a machine learning model. As long as you get value out of it, you're fine.
I'm just trying to close up the question and topic about why a company should take the expert help from consultancies. I guess the conclusion basically is that unless you have experts already, you need to get started quickly. And the way to get started more quickly is to hire experts. And that usually comes from consultancies. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, I would say so. Because you need to avoid making the mistakes that people have already made.
Yeah. And if you hire a master thesis student that have no experience whatsoever and think that they will not make mistakes, you're very much wrong or naive, right?
Yeah, I think you're in for a tough ride.
But I think also what you're highlighting when you say the expert, well, it's a difference to be a LinkedIn expert and to have like 10 years, grind of trying to get things in production. So when we're also talking about in a company that hasn't done it before, to give it to someone internally who hasn't done it before versus, okay, at least we need someone who knows what this is all about, who has experienced this ride. For me, that's what the real expert you bring in here is also basically some scars, some skin, some sand, tan.
Learning from all the failures.
Learning from the failures, to be frank.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Victor, do you have any thoughts about this? Why should people come to, or a company come to Modulai AI?
No, but
now you did it
I know. Sorry.
But I think also the way we are working is to clearly define what to solve before we solve something.
So once again,
we before all the projects we do, we spend some time in the beginning to define what problem to solve.
Yes. Okay.
And
identifying the right problem first.
Yeah.
The floor grinder problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The scoped down something separate, easy to compartmentalize. Yeah.
And I think those things are very hopefully they are not too tricky to identify, these problems, but I think they are really hard to define without the expertise of having that you've done this before.
I think this is a brilliant comment on this, because there's one thing to say, I want to build a model for loyalty or something very vague, right? Compared to...
I'm just shrugging.
You've heard it,
as
right?
you said that.
You get something very vague from the business sense, and then to narrow it down to something narrow that we can solve, and to do proper problem framing. You cannot really do proper problem framing if you're not understanding what math you're thinking about or options you have. So you need to, this whole business to analytics or machine learning model translation, and understanding this is a classification problem or this is a sorting problem or whatever it is, right? So how can you do that if you're not trained in these topics? So that's another thing. If you don't have any, and even this topic, this is a huge difference to me from a junior guy coming out of university to someone who has tried to frame problems for 10 years. I think that's one of the skills that you really learn.
Right, and you don't learn that at university because you have this predefined data set and it's a classification problem because it says in 1A classify label in column X. And
you need to write the math problem first and then solve it. And this is not, so I think this is a lot of things. I think that comment, the problem framing aspect of it.
Yeah, which is a lot of things. A lot of times it happens to us that we come with a customer and we sit down with the customer and we realize that this is not a good enough problem. Exactly. And a lot of consultancy companies would, okay, let's do it with this company at all anyway, because we can earn money on it. But we actually say no, because we know that this model will never go into production, and it's out of scope.
But how many times does the journey really start with? The customer think they have nailed the problem, and you really need to work on nailing the problem for quite a bit to get it sharp enough. Isn't that every gig almost?
Right. Yeah, I would say that 80% of all the customer first meetings, we say that. I think we somehow realize that this is not actually relevant.
we need to, and then it could be relevant, but we need to peel the onion a couple of layers more here, or
which is not something we do. So then you need to go to some consultancy company that can charge you for having workshops for forever.
So actually, you're a tough cookie. You're actually wanting the customer to have a fairly sharp understanding of a problem they want to solve.
Right. Yeah, and that's super important.
Yeah.
I'm biting my tongue here, but okay.
Good. Go.
Don't you agree?
I think, knowing what the problem should be in advance is very hard. I think, anyone that say that they know what the right problem is before they've experimented with it is very naive. I think you need to have rather a very strong failing fast kind of methodology on this and right. Actually be able to experiment with things before you...
But let me clarify then.
Yes.
And go back to the car factory analogy.
Yeah.
Because you don't build a car factory and you say you fail fast by, let's see if we can build a truck. Let's see if we can build a small car, a big car, family car, whatever. Then you have started with a too broad scope and failing fast in that. Yeah, right. And you can fail fast in a much smaller scope. And what I'm talking about is actually when you start with that bigger scope.
Okay, I see. Good point.
Yeah,
good point.
When you say that, let's build a loyalty enhancing model.
Yeah,
and then you would whatever that means, because maybe that scope is too big. But if you, of course, you need to experiment and learn as you go, but you should have some clear business goal in mind, and then you can in that limited scope you experiment.
Yeah, and to add also before we move on, like I remember one client of us, they had like, we want a shopping list of machine learning solutions.
Okay.
And that was quite, and then that became from, I think this was a 2-week project. And then we had some workshops with them. And then we discussed, what can we do with this company? Created this shopping list. And then based on that shopping list, we could come with recommendations. Like here we see that the most value we see would bring to your business would be to focus on these 2 things. But then we have to define those things. And then we did that. And based on that, we could move on with building an MVP or whatever you want to call it.
So sometimes there's a process to sort of nut out the use cases, of course.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. I think we should try to move back to the main theme here a bit.
Yes.
And that would basically be to see, given that you have been doing this for quite a number of years now, it would be awesome to just hear a bit more about your experience. And I'm not sure if you can name the companies or give some examples, but perhaps you can give some analogies or at least speak a bit about some of the experience, best practices, what have worked. And I think also it would be super interesting if you can mention something that has not worked during this time. Can you think about some projects that you have worked with that would be interesting for companies to hear? This was a good idea, or this was potentially a bad idea to start with?
Yeah, it's a very broad question. But so one distinction that I usually make is between off-the-shelf models and research.
Yes.
Because when you have use cases that are standardized and you know what the best practices are, and you have sort of off-the-shelf solutions or off-the-shelf models. I don't need necessarily pre-trained models, but maybe this is
which library.
Yeah, exactly. This is a light FM model, or this is going to be a tabular problem, a classification problem, whatever. Because then we don't need to go into that research phase. But if you have a problem that sort of is you don't have the off-the-shelf solution, then you're sort of into a completely different area where and the first thing that you sort of need to realize when you start a project is, where are you here? Are you off-the-shelf use case, or are you in the research space? And mistake is definitely when you do projects where you realize that your standard approaches doesn't work and you need to go into research.
What's your thinking then? Is that a bad idea or good idea?
I see a completely new ball game, and you need to sort of go back to the client and say, "Look, man, this is not the type of project we thought it was. It's going to be this type of project."
But you love it because you can do the research.
No, I don't. No, I mean, being business value focused is we need to get this done in this amount of time, and I have a really strong personal feeling that I need to deliver what the customer wants in the time, and then you just need to spend a shitload of time in order to make it work. But so, and that's an important distinction, I think. And another important distinction.
But just to clarify, so you try to understand, is this an off-the-shelf solution or is it a research solution? If it is a research solution, you are trying to back out potentially of that idea.
No, but I mean, you need to be aware that you're going into unknown territory, and the customer needs to be aware that you're going into.
So that's a bigger investment if you go
exactly,
into that.
And you cannot really guarantee that you get business value out of it at the end.
So I think the key topic that I was trying to joke about is to manage expectations. This is a completely different ball game we're getting into. Do you want to do that with us?
Yeah, and some projects, I mean, recommendation systems is like that in some sense, that recommendation systems work. Mm-hmm. And okay, you can just realize you have a first meeting with the client. Okay, this is a standard recommendation system. We can apply the standard techniques and so on. We know that we will get an uplift in clicks or whatever. It all works. It always works. No, maybe not. Often works. And sometimes you realize, okay, but now we're actually going into unknown territory, and then you need to manage expectations and say to the clients, we don't know what kind of business value we will get out of this. It might not work, and so on. The mistake that you can do in that sense is actually you think that you will be able to deliver, and you don't.
I can understand the clear-cut cases is kind of this. Is it left or right? The problem is the gray area when you thought that you're going to, I will be able to solve this with these standard
and I think off the shelf. The only way to solve that is expertise, sort of experience,
expertise plus experimentation.
Experimentation. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I sometimes, I don't think until you tried it with the real data that you do have, if that will have the predictive power that you need to actually make some kind of uplift or not, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
but it's a great thing. I want to make another distinction here, which is use cases where business value is only created when you reach a certain model performance. And there are some cases that are like that.
Okay.
I mean, I know in some sense you can translate it. I need to get above 19 AUC, otherwise it won't work. Yeah. It doesn't
AUC, you mean area under the curve, like the ROC, AIC.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and it's just a simplification. But sometimes it is like that. Yes. Unless if we end up at 80, it won't be better than the current solution. And then you can be in that territory, like you don't know the data. It could be a lot of Bayesian error in the problem, so you might up end with 85, and it's not good enough, and that's really hard to know beforehand.
Yes,
but there are also use cases where you know that the machine learning will sort of provide value almost irrespectively of how bad it is.
Okay, you need to elaborate on that.
Yeah.
No, and because it could be so in some cases that we are, it's sort of introducing a machine learning model in the organization as part of the project or the product that the company has, and so on, could provide value to the organization. Sort of just getting this value, because basically what they have right now is random. Sort of, they don't have the time to do anything about it.
A machine learning model can be worse than random. I've seen that many times.
Right, and sure, there are probably cases that are like that. But in some sense, that there are cases where you would say that, irrespectively of the data, we will be able to provide something that has value.
So you're highlighting now that there will be an uplift.
That was a very strong statement, I think. But okay.
Right.
But okay, go
can
ahead.
you give, what is a typical example there where you are fairly confident that there's something would be better? Like how does that look like, which is not then, that has this lower threshold that it's better, but how much better you don't know?
No, but okay, maybe we can go back to the fish brain example. which is a product that we did in the beginning, where you had this application for people, anglers, amateur anglers, where they want to know where to go fish at a certain point in time. Right. If I'm going for salmon, where should I go? Should I go in the morning? Should I go in the afternoon? Should I go to a stream? Should I go to the lake? And so on. And what they had was something very heuristic, or maybe not even existing at all. So then you could say that we will be able to provide something data-driven that could give you some hint of where to go, in order to like salmon will be more common in this stream in the beginning of the morning.
I'm just very surprised about your statement, I must say, and especially since we have a financial background. There is so many examples of how there are completely no predictive power at all in time series, in stock time series data or whatnot. So
right.
So
and a time series I try to stay away from.
Okay, but you would agree at least that there are cases where there is no chance of even finding some predictive power in the data.
Right, but okay, yeah.
Especially in finance.
But finance is usually the case where you have this, I need to get above a certain threshold, otherwise you don't get money out of the solution. So those are definitely in that area. But okay, let's talk about something else, and I will put a back process in order to
a type 2 problem, Kahneman type 2 problem.
Right,
but should we continue, or do you have?
No, please let me continue.
Please.
Yeah. No, but I mean, just being able to provide a forecast of this is how you should go fish, and give some insights and being data driven about that. It's not really about model performance in that sense. I mean, because in that project, we didn't really have a way of measuring the performance of the model in a sound way.
Before you had to start first and start benchmarking against your own.
But if you were to have a random model and just say this is the way you should go fishing, it wouldn't be a good solution. You would be fooling customers.
No, exactly, because we only had qualitative ways of validating the model. Right? Yeah. Did you plotted the SHAP values or checked the feature importances and did the predictions make sense and so on? And we did all these tests and said that, okay, but these forecasts actually make sense according to the presumptions that anglers have and so on. And then we made a forecast that seemed to be appreciated by the users of the app. It was not really a question of AUC or accuracy or something like that. It was more a qualitative assessment of do the forecasts make sense.
And that's of course fine if you can make at least some assessment or evaluation.
But that's what I mean here. That it's okay. I could rephrase it. It's not, you don't need to quantify the model performance, but you can qualitatively.
But some evaluation at least.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, sure, absolutely.
But it also comes. I think also in a way we can find use cases, and this is more common than we think, where people are doing things completely blind. There is no data. They haven't thought about it. You're going on the gut feel approach, and you simply we don't even need to go to machine learning. Okay, let's get understanding of the data and the distributions to actually have something to gauge us. And I think in those cases where you go from being blind to now we have something, this is value. And maybe even if it's really early and the models are not correct and all that, when you start appreciating and not just leaning into type 1 intuition, but more qualitative, at least start thinking about things. I can see that in business that they're not used to having data part of the decision making. It's gut feel. It's sort of cultural. So
and to build on that also, like coming back to the data and the importance of having a lot of data or just data that is relevant for whatever solution you're gonna solve. That's also a learning from that case, right? If you have no idea what to solve or what to do, and then you start investigating something, and then from that project, maybe you don't have a model in production, but you maybe have an idea of, okay, what data is relevant for this problem to solve.
Yeah.
And that by itself is quite valuable. Instead of gather all the data you have, you can focus then maybe on.
And I just need to give an anecdote from Spotify days once, and this is also into the ideas of data-centric versus model-centric kind of development. And they built a model. They had some data built on some logs, from mobile app usage in Spotify, and they came to some conclusion. I'm not going to say exactly what the prediction was, but they came to a conclusion, and they said, this is the way to guide the users in this in a certain way. And then all the domain experts said, this makes no sense. This is weird. How the heck can this be? And I said, I don't trust this. I refuse to accept that this is the proper way. And they did A/B testing on this. And A/B testing, being a causal, proper way to test things, still said, this is the way to go. And everyone was like, I don't trust this. No, sorry. I have, 10 years of expertise in understanding user experience. This cannot be correct. And every evidence, every experimentation said, this is the way to go. And, this caused a lot of upset, and people started to trust, to think, can we really trust being data-driven if this says something like this? And then they really digged a lot deeper into the data, and they found the data were actually having some bugs in it. So the logging didn't work, and it logged improperly. And that was the reason that the prediction was made as it is, because the data was wrong. And this is actually really dangerous. I think this is an example of you sometimes need to have expertise and you need to have experimentation, but it shouldn't be blindly trusting the data all the time. The data quality can be extremely poor if you don't have the domain expertise to also guide it, right?
Yeah, sure.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Cool. But going back to some good examples or bad examples of some projects, can you give some more concrete examples potentially?
But Fishbrain is a cool thing because it's a little bit of a storytelling here. That was one of your first projects, right?
Right.
So maybe we can do a little bit of a storytelling around, what were you there to do? How did it work? Or what did you learn? What did you learn about your consulting engagement that you can improve to the next project? All this. There's so much.
So I think that that was definitely a project where the anglers had a lot of ideas of this is how it should work, and they really wanted it confirmed by the data. Or sort of so one thing about fish is that is the moon affecting how the fish act?
Really?
It's true.
Yeah, and which is something they wanted to get some data-driven facts about how that works. And
all fishermen would say that, but can you prove it?
No, so what we discovered that for some species it seemed to have an effect, but it depends on the species and circumstances and so on. But whatever that means, the Shapley values were indicating that. That feature was significant. No, but so in that project we had a lot of how can a machine know how to do that, and what's the problem? Because in that case we didn't have any negative examples. We only had reports of fish. So where people say that I catch a fish at this point in time. We didn't have any data we didn't see any fish, and sort of no negative examples. So we had to come up with a strategy of actually build a model that could handle that and make some kind of prediction that made sense, even if we didn't have any negative examples. So and then I think that in some sense you managing expectations here, saying that knowing that the customer needs to know that we only have a data that is able to do this thing, because it will never be able to solve this problem for real because we haven't collected the data in a certain way. We have super biased data, and we need to do the best thing that we can do with that data. And sometimes that the customer has the knowledge that they have really biased data, and that happens a lot in finance, for example. That you have because of the operational methods of the company and so on. You know that the labels are highly biased, or the data collection is highly biased and so on, and you know that will limit the performance of the model. And sometimes, you know, realize that the customer has no idea about how biased their data is. And then you will have a big struggle in managing expectations, because they think we have perfect data, or our labels are correct, or it's a perfect sample of the distribution coming through the door, or whatever. And sort of, you know that the model that you build will have all these adverse effects or performance issues when it actually goes into production, because you have this training inference queue and so on. And yeah, I think one of the things that we have learned over the years is actually, if you realize that you have this bias in the data, talk with the customer as soon as you realize that. Because you show all your cards. That's how you win the game, in some sense. Right. That you don't throw things under carpet. It's a bad strategy in the long term. And that could be some of the things that you realize, the biased data set, that will actually impact, how successful the project will be. And as soon as you can talk about that and put that on the table, the better it is. That's for sure.
But to take a couple of examples, how does it usually work when you get started? And we have come through the problem framing is super important, and we've nailed that. And we think we have the data. Someone says, we should have data on this topic so we can start learning. What is the sort of usual do's and don'ts when it comes to getting the first original data set together to even gauge if this is to collect, what are the do's and don'ts? What is, oh my God, I wish we could stop doing this and I wish we could do this instead. You see, this is where we are in the process, right? We're starting to try to understand and validate the model and collect data and see if we even have the data.
Yeah, and we have, Anders mentioned it a few minutes ago, this data versus model-centric approaches. And I think I would like to propose another approach, which is value-centric.
It's actually similar to what we said, application-centric. I agree. It's also
right. Because and one thing that we do is to try to go to putting the end-to-end pipeline in place as soon as possible, and actually try to go to production in some sense as soon as possible. Because then you sort of it's all about low-hanging fruits and catching them iteratively. And the low-hanging fruits could be in the model, it could be in the data, but you don't really know until you have tried. So and this is sort of with an analytical frame ladder and so on. You sort of you focus on the data, but you have no idea about the value in the end. So you're probably going to catch all the fruit up in the tree and having no ideas which apples are below. So and this is something that we have learned the hard way, I think, as well. In some recent examples, for example, where we stayed far from production for far too long. Like looking at metrics, AUCs and so on, and validating the data, but not actually trying it out. And that could be really dangerous because it's so hard to fool yourself, especially in validating the models.
But when you're talking about this now, are you going? I love it. But are we talking about finding taking out a data set and doing it? How should I put it, manually, or are you actually talking about actually building a pipeline that is sort of feeding? If we were planning to do this as a real-time update of the training data set, are you trying to do the minimal slice of the real setup? Or what are you saying here when you're saying that you want to take it real?
I think that's conflicting different issues because...
Yes. Good.
No, but I'm talking about you don't need to... definitely need to validate the data. You need to understand the data, and you need to validate the model, and you need to understand the model. But you don't, without having an idea of what value it will provide, you should not spend too much time on that until you actually have the end-to-end pipeline and can see the effects. You know about training inference skew, you know sort of which features are important, sort of what... how customers react maybe to some predictions, I don't know. But exploring all these unknown unknowns and known unknowns before spending too much time on either model validation or improving models and data validation and data improvements.
And when we're now talking about going to value, Because now what you're doing, you're stringing the value chain, or whatever you want to call it, from the data to the usage in reality. Are we talking now getting some sort of feedback from if it's an internal customer and user? Will this be, will this be useful in your daily work to predict, to improve this activity or this decision?
And I think that's one of the things I think a lot about, actually, how to make sure that you prove value without taking too much risk. And I think that comes back to this small company versus big company scenario, and it's a lot use case dependent. Because if you're going to build a full self-driving system, let's say, you don't want to fail fast, which is maybe a use case where that approach doesn't really work. Maybe you need to simulate or come up with some experimentation setup where you can actually try out things without actually, putting dangerous stuff on the road. And I don't know the answer here, and I think will become a lot of it's very use case specific, but you should try to get as close as proving value as you can as soon as possible.
Right. So putting things out there and really trying to evaluate the proper value that they're interested in is something you should really strive for as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's a great learning.
But this is a huge topic, because now we can talk about output versus outcome, or we can talk about we can produce this number as this insight, but how does it actually translate into what the user is doing and how he's acting upon this and making decision on this? So then you need to be really deep into the user experience and understanding how will this be used.
Can you take an example, like a use case?
I think Motherbrain is a good example, and Henrik Landgren said as well. We realized very fast we can do perfect models, but in order to provide operational value, we need to find and embed the models of Motherbrain close in the workflow where it makes sense to have it in their daily work for whoever are their partners or the consultants selecting the unicorn, so to speak. So you need to really understand, what if I take Motherbrain, okay, we're going to use a model to pick unicorns or potential unicorns, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have a workflow for someone who's working in a venture capitalist firm who has that job to basically vet and filter and try to do the first pre-screening and selection. So in the end, you need to have good user adoption means, we have a perfect model, but you know what, they keep doing it their old way anyway. So I'm trying to get to that user adoption point of view, that becomes very important to really understand how will this model interact with the human, or is this fully automated? Then, how will it interact with its environment in order to really gauge value and usefulness?
Right. And that's actually a good point with coming back to the discussion with Anders here about model performance. But this is an example where maybe model performance is not as relevant.
Exactly. Or it's important, but in the end, it's worth nothing because it's...
No, but model performance is highly... Okay, if you're a venture capitalist firm, if a model, it can be almost as bad as can be. As soon as it gives you a recommendation of a company that you invest in and you get a high payback back, you have created value. Yeah, which is something that is really hard to quantify in terms of recall at K or whatever. It's more qualitative in some sense, and then you can try to transform that into something that you can quantify and train your model on and so on. But I know that in the Motherbrain team, what to optimize the model for is very. It's a huge topic, especially since the experience of the users is something that you cannot really... It's not really a question of AUC or recall at K or accuracy or something like that. It's something else. And this is something that we experience in recommendation systems as well. It's really, really hard to validate the recommendation system offline.
Perhaps we can move into a topic very related to this and trying to think of a good phrasing of the question, but trying to keep on the theme, what makes projects succeed or fail. Given all the projects you have worked with, have you found some kind of indicators that says that now it's time to potentially fail fast, or now this is looking good, we should really proceed with this project? Can you give some kind of experience or some kind of examples of this is when I start to feel in my guts that this product will be a really big value contributor?
Yeah, and I mean, the clear answer here is when the expectations from the customers is totally unrealistic. Okay. And this has happened a few times when you know that you start with a model and you try to explain that, okay, this is a predictive model, it has a limited performance, it's not perfect, or you have issues with the data and so on, and you realize as you go on with the project that the customer doesn't really understand it. I mean, they think that this is a standard manufacturing project where you need the car that is output at the end is perfect. I mean, it's according to specifications. Right. I have written the specifications over here, and I have said that sort of it should have red color, it should be able to steer, and it should have these lights and so on, and that's what I expect. And a lot of projects doesn't really work like that. And then when you realize that the customer expectations are so far away from what is reasonable the amount of time that you have, irrespectively of how much you talk about it, then
it's time to stop.
Then you have an issue.
I mean, I think it's related also to what John Bosch said, once here really nicely, and that's the difference between, if we call it AI engineering, as he calls it, compared to other types of engineering. It can be manufacturing engineering, as you mentioned now, and you can produce a car and you can set the specifications exactly, and you can rather well predict, this is how the car will look like given the specifications. Yeah. But that's not necessarily how AI engineering works, right? No.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big learning that we do not really know. I think, if we just compare software engineering to AI engineering, in software engineering, if you want to build a web page or some kind of backend system or a data solution for whatever, you can specify the specifications rather well. But in AI, not really, right? So the big extra unknown is the data potentially, right?
Yeah.
So having that expectation, is that basically what we're saying there? So when the customer expectations are similar to manufacturing engineering practices, then it will probably not be good.
No. Yeah, you need to realize that machine learning is essentially statistics. Yes. And you use statistics because there is an unknown quantity that you want to estimate. And this estimation is always going to be an estimation. It's a prediction about the future or about some unknown fact that you have. And it's super important to realize that there is a certain aspect of uncertainty in what you're doing. And if you cannot accept that, you should not go into the AI track.
Right. But it's very interesting, right? Because Sumil Gupta, who was here, he highlighted this as one of the main challenges in terms of how management and organization work, and the dogma. So, and I think he says it like, we are used to dealing with deterministic ways of thinking and diseases we understanding, and now we need to shift from deterministic to probabilistic management.
Yeah,
and this is a quite big deal.
And I think that's the wrong way to phrase it.
Okay,
because thinking that anything is deterministic is fooling yourself. But when you go into something data-driven, and especially machine learning-driven, you make the probabilistic nature of things concrete, which is something that is probably the issue here.
Yeah, and I think maybe I need to rephrase it. So what Sumil was referring to is that the managers of the business who are thinking now and having all these crazy expectations or having a really hard time, we're having a hard time communicating. They're coming from a very deterministic upbringing, if I say it like that. They are schooled in a certain way. They have learned the world looks in a certain way. A car is a car. Manufacturing is a manufacturing. Specification is a specification. And we do waterfall and it comes out. Even if it's in reality bullshit, we all even know projects has failed. We are having a very deterministic understanding of the world. And now here, one of the things becoming data and AI driven is to reconcile with a more probabilistic thinking. And then now the scary point, as you say, when the probabilistic is made to look concrete, Now we have it. This is a lot of.
It's part of the cultural change, I would say.
This is the cultural change, right?
Right. But so just. I lost my thread. But
the time is actually flying away rather quickly here. So if we can start also to try to move to shortly at least into some more societal. Okay.
I just remember here. So this is about the risk thing.
Yeah.
It's actually realizing that you need to take risk. The manager that thinks that the world is deterministic is minimizing risk.
He doesn't understand risk, really.
Right.
He doesn't really understand risk, and he doesn't understand that business is risk.
Throwing under the carpet.
Right. Can you mention some Modulai project that perhaps you personally, Josef or Viktor, are extra excited about? Something that you thought, this is awesome. I'm so proud of this project. Can you think of something that you can mention?
Yeah, I think we do many like very exciting projects.
Yeah.
And some of them are closer to heart because they are creating value in a different way than that maybe in money or whatever it might be. Yeah. So some of the health projects.
Yeah, exactly. I would say medtech.
Yeah,
that's definitely medtech is something that is hugely rewarding.
Yeah.
And we had the project with Cenicor, which is they're making a small piece of machinery for measuring your ECG. Yeah. In order to determine stroke.
EEG or
ECG, right?
ECG.
What's that?
So it's your heartbeat,
okay.
Measurement of your heartbeat.
Okay.
And in order to determine risk of atrial fibrillation, which is this heart problem that you can have that can cause a stroke and so on. And what goes into that problem is that you take these ECG measurements. It's a time series showing the heartbeats. And a doctor goes in and looks at that and try to determine if you have a higher risk of stroke or basically this atrial fibrillation problem. And that takes a huge amount of time. It's very complicated. It's a little bit subjective from a doctor's perspective. Yeah. They make different assumptions or make different predictions of actually the risk and so on. And in the medical field, they have tried to come up with ways of quantify that. But basically what we built for them and what other companies other machine learning projects and so on has tried to do is to make a model that predicts the risk based on that ECG measurement.
Right.
And you can use that model to find the risk of stroke much earlier than you would otherwise. So reducing the labor costs or whatever, the cost for doctors to go look at these ECGs, and that could potentially save a lot of lives, actually. Awesome. Which is something that I think is super cool. And that's it's really providing a lot of societal value because you could find these customers that has these not customers, but find these patients that has this risk. It's always customers. But you can find these patients that or people in risk and try to catch them as soon as possible. And we're working on a scientific paper where we're going to publish the results from that project. And we're hoping to put it into production or make it actually a real tool that doctors can use. Yeah. But in medicine, it works slowly. So it will take
because you need to go through all the different trials. And
exactly. You need to have regulators looking at the models and so on. You cannot really fail fast in the same way as you do in some projects.
But I think that's a good segue potentially to more societal kind of questions. And then thinking about regulation potentially, which of course the medicine industry has a lot of, but so do many other industries, I would argue. And then we have a lot of upcoming regulation when it comes to AI as well. And then you can have a lot of opinions about that. I'm not sure if you follow the AI Act work that is progressing or...
No. Actually, when I went here this day, I realized that Anders was probably talking about the AI regulation stuff, and I don't know nothing about that.
Let's skip that then.
That's the way to avoid it. Don't even go into it. It's very, very smart.
Actually, what I thought about my answer was going to be that my role is not politics. My role is to, given the circumstances and the limitations that society and politicians has given me, try to make as much value from machine learning as possible for my clients.
Yeah.
So
It's a very politically correct answer. I like it.
Yes.
Actually, I don't think it's a politically correct answer. It is, but I think the core point is also to stay the course here. That's not my job. No. Our job is to do this. And if other expert needs to worry about if we should do this and do this, that's not what our consulting is all about. No. Our consulting is about hardcore. Can we do more about it? Yeah, we can. Can we use it? Well, go and talk to lawyers.
Yeah, and make sure you talk to lawyers before you deploy it.
And maybe you talk to lawyers before you deploy it, and maybe you talk to lawyers before you talk to us.
No, but one thing that
Let me rephrase it then. Okay, without you being expert on regulations, and who is that? But anyway, have you experienced challenges with using machine learning in the project you have worked with that has come more for legal reasons than technological reasons?
Public sector.
Yeah, right? Yeah, definitely public sector. So, and I think, GDPR is of course the sort of elephant in the room here, which is something that, at least in the beginning, and maybe some in the public sector, still is the case that they are super afraid of that. And the lawyers always say, no, you cannot do that, or you don't even dare to ask the lawyers or something. You just assume that nothing is possible.
You know what you should do? A small advice: if you speak to lawyers, don't ask if you're allowed to do anything. Always ask, how should I be able to do this?
Yeah, that's probably a good advice. But I'm not the one talking to the lawyers, but because, as Henrik said, we're focusing on they give us the sort of boundaries, and then we try to do something about that. Yes. But of course, with the public sector, it's the case that as soon as you in the data set, or the data set is in a database where you have personal data, sort of everything becomes hugely complicated. Okay, we were.
But let's skip that if it's not a favorite topic of discussion.
But I think it's one thing learning here. Is it sometimes a misconception that it's like it's as you said, we are going for data, not even the sensitive data, but at some point we're doing it from this database where, are we over exaggerating, or are we misunderstanding the problem even? I mean, like, you are not the lawyer now, you want to avoid it, but from your point of view, sometimes is the topic misunderstood or not well enough understood?
No, I would not say that, because I think the regulations are definitely there for a reason, and companies would probably do things that it's not the right thing to do unless these regulations were there. And having these restrictions actually making people think about it beforehand, and actually realizing, okay, this is maybe not the way to do things. That actually help you creating these use cases where you do something that is kosher in some sense.
Sorry, but I actually agree. And I also like to add that I think actually regulation is a very important and fun topic sometimes, and properly made. I mean, the alternative of not having a regulation is, of course, horrible. So of course, regulation is super important, and we need to have the right one. And I think, most legislators have the awesome intentions to do that and to preserve, integrity. So that's, of course, super important.
But I think, though, or sorry.
Yes, no, go ahead.
But I think sometimes, and I don't know this to talk about it really, but I think like regulations are great, but they should also sometimes be questioned, right?
Yes.
Like, because what problem, like it is this project, Strängnäs kommun did a great project about NLP prediction for children at risk, which was about the socialtjänst, which is social services, right? And the people working there, they get a lot of reports. And if you have an individual that is being harmed in some way, you don't get just one report. Normally you get a couple of them in different times and from different people. And what takes time and is a struggle is that the ones working with this are very stressed. They work a lot and they have a lot of things to do. So they don't have the time to go back to the historical reports. And the problem here is that they don't know how like what's the level of importance to actually act on this, because if you don't have the time to go back to reports and see a pattern in like violence, for example, then how do you know when to like rescue this kid? And here I think, and I'm manifesting this now because I want us to work on this project this year, and if not us, maybe someone else. But and here I see the issue with like saying no because of GDPR and the risk of someone, an adult, being hanged out compared to our children being hit or even killed or whatever. Like how, if we go there, isn't it better that kids are being rescued than someone like
you get into very tough ethical.
Right. It's right.
But it's really good one. It's a really good one.
We actually tried to come up with a technical solution that would solve that. Oh, sorry, bottom mic. We tried to come up with a technical solution that would solve that in order to make anonymized data set and train the model in a completely GDPR compliant way and so on, but it ended up being a super complicated, like technically complicated solution. So like I was even into homomorphic encryption, if you know, if you know that. And
that's super slow as well. Slow
yeah, so it's sort of like everybody realized that this is not feasible in some sense.
Still, I must just say that, you know, we need regulation. Actually, it can be a value add. If you do the proper regulation, it actually can be a value add for a company or for a country or for a continent. If you have the proper regulation that, you know, people actually prefer to use. So I just want to make that clear as well.
I agree.
Good. Then it's bad if it's properly implemented, but that's another problem. Perhaps we should move to another societal thing.
Maybe can I ask for a wrap up?
Sure.
Because in some ways, when we pick the theme here, if you were like, forget if we were not driving this conversation, if you were sort of coming in with a blank sheet and you wanted to make, okay, this is my key message that I want to bring to the table. You know, so speak freely on wrap this up. You know, succeeding or failing or do's and don'ts. Where is the end game? What you kind of want have us to sort of leave this topic on?
Yeah, but I think my main learning over these 5 years is try to go to production as soon as you can.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that. And if your use case is such that going to production is super hard, then try to come up with a way that actually prove value as close as the real use case would be.
Yeah, and there are so many dimensions why this is important. First of all is to really understand if it's doable, you know, if it's value for real, but it's ultimately, it's not until you start putting it in real production that you truly understand what the hell you're doing to some degree.
Yeah. There's so much to learn when actually you are in production.
Yeah.
Everything becomes a lot more clear.
Value-centric, as you said, right?
Yeah, value-centric.
Value-centric.
Yeah, value-centric, not data-centric, not all.
Commit to deploy, one of the t-shirts.
Exactly, yes. It is.
Commit to deploy.
Commit to deploy. Could we take a more like a research kind of topic as well? Because you have a background in research as well, and I think it's a fun thing and an important thing. But I think that there are more, you know, there are different ways to do research, and it can be driven by different factors. And you can do it the Elon Musk style. We haven't even spoken about Elon Musk yet.
No, and I thank you for that. Regulation and Elon Musk are.
No, actually, those are the email prep. What topics do you don't want to talk about? Regulation, Elon Musk.
But okay, so what I'm trying to say is I think that there are a lot of issues with especially academic kind of research going on right now. I certainly hope it will change, because I think they are driving the more kind of basic research that we need to have. That said, there are, you know, the big tech giants that are driving research in other ways and are today the main people driving at least the type of the conference that we do have, and I think there are weird signals and indicators and drivers for, you know, what gets published in the big conferences right now. Still, okay, so my question is basically this. Of course, we need to have basic research, but there are also the other end, which I would call like engineering-driven research. What I mean with that is actually close to what you said about having value first or being value-centric, saying, let's think about the engineering problem first. Let's think about the value first, and then backtrack from that, saying, okay, we need to be able to understand the heart problem that you mentioned. And then you start thinking about the value that provides first, and then backtrack and say, okay, it didn't work with the model, the off-the-shelf solution in this case. We need to do research now suddenly. Mm-hmm. But that's another way to drive what research to do. And that is, I would argue, also what Tesla and others are doing in some sense. What do you think about that way to drive research? Should it be basic research without having any connection to value, or should it be more value-driven research?
And the answer to that is basically, what do you want the research for? Mm. So if you go to, have you read this classic A Mathematician's Apology? I think it's Hardy. He's a famous mathematician in numerology, where they basically calculate Lip's prime numbers and solving the Diophantine equations or whatever it can be. And he basically says, not to go into that rabbit hole, but basically, what do you want academia for? Mm. Is academia to provide the fundamental tools for industry to drive the economy? Yeah. Or is academia for something else?
Yeah, what is your definition? Okay, so what is your definition of engineering versus research? Do you have a good definition of this is engineering, this is research?
Okay.
Because
right. Okay. Engineering in my world would be more like concrete. I'm going to build this thing. Mm. You have the specifications, and it's going to be a bridge between A and B, and I'm going to make it as good as possible, and my pre-specified budget, and in order to solve this problem. Mm. So research is just it's more a question of exploration. Mm. Let's think about what kind of bridges can take cars from A to B. That's more of a research question. I don't have a specified goal in some sense. I'm just exploring.
Would you agree with my definition, which is a bit oversimplified, saying engineering is about building products, engineering is about building knowledge?
No. Research is about building knowledge. You said engineering twice.
Oh, I saw.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no,
okay.
You meant it, but you said it double.
Research is about building knowledge.
Right. And yeah, I think I can accept that to some extent. But I think if we restrict academia to only provide tools for industry, we're not thinking in the right way of academia. Yeah. So knowledge, it's knowledge for humanity in some sense. Like how does the world works?
And you coming from physics.
Exactly. That's maybe it's just expanding the knowledge of the world in some sense. And
how does string theory becomes value-centric?
Exactly, and that's a completely wrong thing. It's like, I usually say that science is a lot like art. It could be a pretty painting to look at. But understanding an equation, it's something that provides value in itself. It doesn't need to increase the BNP of a country. It has nothing to do with that.
I want to throw some fuel on the fire. That maybe
this is definitely after work.
Anders Bresell, who is at Telenor Connection and who was here, this is maybe season 1 or 2, a couple of years ago. He was sitting in this chair and we were talking about a similar topic. And he was a little bit cynical in relation to research. You said engineering and research. Now I add the word AI. Because what we had on this conversation then, and he came from the angle a little bit like, that we need basic research in many fields is a given. But how should we look at research in academia in AI when we have some of the tech giants, in my way, even if they are pursuing value, I would still argue that this is very close to basic research in taking the AI field forward with what Jan LeCun and them are doing.
Yeah, sure.
And basically, with the brain drain going on and sort of the access to technology, the access to the compute, I think Anders had a very interesting idea of what academic AI research should be all about, because he was to the point that why should KTH try to compete with OpenAI and building this top, pushing the boundaries of pure AI?
And they shouldn't.
And he said it. I think academic research in AI should be about cross-pollinating AI into the different disciplines where we need it. How can we make major breakthroughs in other in medicine or like this? So was it fuel or what? Was it fuel on the fire?
Yeah, but I would definitely say so. He's still in the academic research for value creation corner then.
Yeah, he is.
Which is not where I am.
And you are, okay, so what is then different when we go into pure basic research problems in AI? Where do we end up?
So I think there is a lot of interesting stuff to understand. We still don't really know why deep learning models work. And that's something that I think is a really interesting academic research area, which is not really relevant for value creation. Because as long as deep learning models work, value creation, you're fine. Somehow, maybe there are some edge cases and you need the explainable AI and there's some, of course, it's not as simple as I'm saying here, but really understanding why deep learning works. Or maybe there's some deeper mathematical truths.
Or how can a stupid model, like a ChatGPT underlying model, fairly simple, just become so powerful it's used by scale? Why does that work? Why does that really work?
That could be an interesting research topic. Yeah, for sure.
We see it seems to work with scale. Why?
Which is just knowledge. It's interesting to know.
I think we can summarize it. There are pros and cons with both approaches. And for one, if you're only having value-centric research, it will miss potentially a lot of findings that you will find from basic research and vice versa.
And I want to emphasize here that I don't think that the problem in academia right now is related to this question. Because I think that incentives in academia are completely off.
No, yes.
And it's not related to this knowledge versus value creation thing. It's just basically this drive to push out papers, to apply for
minimum
money,
publication unit or whatever.
Yeah, exactly like that. Which is
and it's driving us that it's better to work on optimizing a metric on an academic data set 1 point higher, that it doesn't give any real value
Perhaps
to the world.
Have value-centric research as well. Not really, the wrong KPI as number of papers, but seeing what the impact would be a better, perhaps, value.
Right. But impact is hard to measure. And it's also depending on what kind of impact you're
I saw you shuddering of my example, and I guess you agree with me.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we move to even more philosophical and hard to answer questions, and
we're definitely going there,
and even perhaps going AGI.
Yeah, let's go a little bit.
Should we do it?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so how should we frame this? There's, of course, been huge progress in AI in recent times, even though it's been 70 years trying to build some kind of intelligent systems. The last couple of years has been, very successful. And there are so many different ways to define what some kind of general AI is, if it's AGI or if it's Jan LeCun's kind of human-level AI or Elon Musk's real-world AI definition. Have you heard about that?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
Yeah, I try to stay away from it.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you like Elon Musk? That's the first question.
Okay. Yeah.
No, be
have a beer and
he's just all over the place. I love him because of the futuristic approach that he has with the Tesla and SpaceX and Neuralink and Boring Company and so on. I love having a hugely important entrepreneur trying to change the future. That's for sure. We need that.
Yeah, he doesn't think about risk.
No. He's a sci-fi fan. He wants to create the future he read in the sci-fi books when he was a kid. And I love that. I would do the same thing if I had this money. I would probably spend a lot of it on helping humanity and so on. But he's Yeah,
he's all over the place.
He's all over the place, and
Come to the negative part then, please.
Right, and he has opinion. Right, good. Yeah, and you have realized I'm far too diplomatic, probably. And he has opinions that I don't agree with.
Yeah.
Give an example.
Give an example.
Or say you don't want to.
So this transhumanism, for example, I know that he is in this transhumanism camp, which I think is completely philosophically insane.
You don't think there is such a thing when we have super AI that is, more intelligent than all humans combined?
I wouldn't know, and I don't think that's relevant. You cannot create morality based on assumptions about how the future should be. I mean, it's not about the utility of unborn kids. Should never be relevant. We have people living right now. Those are the ones that we should focus on.
But don't you find it philosophically interesting to reason about 50 years in the future?
I find it too hard.
But isn't it fun?
No, I would rather think about quantum mechanics.
Okay. Okay, so let's go.
Let's go there then. Fuck singularity. Let's go there. Let's go there.
Right. No, but you were actually talking about AGI.
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
So what is your? Do you have a preferred definition of what AGI is?
No, definitely not. And I think most of the definitions that we have are sort of off the mark, I would say. Because is comparing AI to humans interesting?
Exactly. Now I like it.
Now this is a good start for sure.
I mean, so first of all, we use kind of artificial intelligence to do things that we are not able. So that they should be trying to emulate us in the first place, that seems to be irrelevant in some sense.
Not even irrelevant, but stupid, I would even say.
Okay, yeah, that's me being diplomatic again.
I'm all about that.
We use them for what they're really good at.
Right, but is human level intelligence something that you really want to emulate? So when we have machine learning breakfast at the company, and we talk about different subjects every week, and we had a topic about Instruct GPT and ChatGPT, of course, the other week, and we talk about is ChatGPT going to replace customer service, something like that, and how human can it be as customer service? But I don't think that's. I mean, customer service, if you call it customer service, then you want someone to answer your questions. You don't want to be someone that is acting like a drunken redneck in a bar, which is something that a human would be, or something that has presumptions or biases about what you're talking about. You didn't put in the cord in the right place, or you haven't rebooted your computer or something like that. That's not the way that customer service should be. The customer service should be something that objectively states fact about what you have been doing and what you should do. It's not about being a human. You really want the answers that it has nothing to do with everything that is to be human, being creative or innovating and wanting relationships or whatever it is to be. It's something else.
I really like what you said there about why should AI go for simulating humans, and we can certainly see that AI is very different from humans today. No question about that, both in how they work, but also how they perform. You, of course, cannot beat AI in chess or in AlphaGo or in identifying tumors on some CAT scan. But humans are good at other things. And why should we even build AI that goes to replace humans? Why not simply go and do research in a direction where AI is good so it can complement humans?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome.
But
it seems that we agree. That was a bit of a shame.
But can we say something about?
Should we go Elon Musk then? Just to annoy Josef.
Just to annoy Josef.
Okay. Yeah. Shoot.
Okay. So one way that Elon Musk phrases it is that to have full self-driving cars requires something to have real world AI, as he says. And what he means with that is not necessarily human level. That's not what he's saying. It's not AGI, but it needs to work in the real world, meaning that if you have a human driving a car, the whole infrastructure around cars is built upon humans. Mm-hmm. It's built about having vision mainly, to see what the traffic signs are, where the lanes are, where other pedestrians or cars are, and so forth. So what you need to be able to build in AI is something that can work in the real world. And as long as you optimize your system to do that, and then just take whatever advantage you can, not necessarily simulating humans, but instead say, okay, we need something that works in the real world and let's optimize for that, then he says that's the most efficient way to build, for example, full self-driving cars. Do you think that's a good strategy?
For making a full self-driving car?
Do you think we will have a full self-driving car in 1 year?
In 1 year? No, absolutely not.
But there are already today. There are many cars that drives without humans today.
Yeah. Right. Okay. But it's a matter of definition.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. But okay, real world AI. I mean, that's machine learning. That's what we have been talking about all day, right? It's just trying to make a machine learning system that works under the circumstances that you have and do what it's supposed to be doing. It has nothing to do with AGI.
AGI for sure.
Yeah, it's something else.
So it's interesting because if you use the word real world AI, we're talking about we need algorithms, machine learning that works in the dirty real world, out in the ocean and the rain. And if your problem you're trying to solve is to drive cars, well, then you have this complexity.
Right. And I think we're still in the machine learning use case sort of area, even though it's a hugely complicated.
But I think, continue.
Yes. So you definitely need to make it more concrete what you're expecting of the AI. And if you wanted to make it be a self-driving car, okay, then you need to make a system for making a self-driving car. It might not be the same AI that does that. That could be an interesting companion on your vacation. And if you want an interesting companion on your vacation, maybe that's also a real world AI, of course, then, but that's optimized and trained in something else that can go swimming with you, or maybe have a glass of beer in the bar and crack jokes or whatever you want to do. So
in your interpretation,
you need to specify what you want it for.
Yeah, so you need to put the frame. You are coming from the idea now, the mental model that yes, real world AI is actually not a bad word, but actually, for what? Yeah. What's the frame here, right?
Yeah, and if you want to for self-driving cars, of course, you want this real world thing that can interact with humans.
So real world AI for this case means that you need to be able to reason and understand and take decisions and actions and all that like a human could, but in this frame. It's still a frame, right?
But I think I objected this like a human could word. Yes. Because because that's not relevant either.
No.
It should be easily to do it much better than a human, actually. Much faster.
I think the problem with self-driving cars is what everybody says. It's the humans on the roads.
Yes, true. So trying to simulate humans would be a stupid thing to do.
Taking 4 beers and driving home in the dark without the lights on or whatever.
Let's simulate that. That's AGI, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
A drunk driving, human-like driving.
Cool. Okay, so perhaps going back to ChatGPT slightly, because
that's maybe one of the last topics here, I think.
Okay, but you mentioned that a couple of times, and you had a ML breakfast. Was that what this is called?
Yeah, machine learning breakfast. It's something we do every Friday in the morning. Every Friday in the morning, we discuss either a paper or some project results or something relevant in machine learning, like a new framework or something like that.
What do you think? For one, do you think ChatGPT was a big thing, or do you think it's an incremental improvement upon GPT-3 or other large language models?
That depends on your perspective. From a machine learning project perspective, I think it's an incremental improvement. But from a societal perspective,
good. Yeah.
It's a really big change.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, because it sort of has changed what people think and talk about AI.
Yes.
So, I mean, can go into, as soon as I say I work in machine learning, it's ChatGPT and people use it at work and they talk about it and I see it on LinkedIn and whatever. It was not like that before.
Yeah. So outside of academia, everyone now suddenly has a different view of AI in some ways.
Yes. So it's definitely a game changer.
Yes.
You cannot ignore that.
What do you think the impact will be then? I know
The real impact, you mean? More like now we saw a media impact, or we saw it's different. It went mainstream, but where will we use it now properly?
No, but I have been thinking about this a lot over the last month, and I think it has changed how I think about machine learning systems.
Interesting.
Because I went into the office this morning, and Emil, which is a colleague of us, he was actually coding JavaScript, and he was not that good at JavaScript. And he was asking ChatGPT to explain JavaScript for him. Like he was writing some code, didn't work. ChatGPT, can you help me write this code? And it actually could. I mean, it's happy, okay, you made this error, you explained this framework and so on. And this is symptomatic of what I think that this is changing. It's using these kind of models to assist you in a new way.
Yes.
And especially I was thinking about recommendation systems, because we have been doing that a lot in the company. And I when you go into shop new clothes, recommendation system is recommending you a new shirt or a new pair of jeans or something like that based on your previous history and based on all these things that we build recommendation systems on. But if you can combine a recommendation system with a ChatGPT kind of like assistant, they would say that I'm interested in a party dress because I'm going into a party. And the ChatGPT could sort of interface with your recommendation system and change your previous purchase history, whatever it wants to do in order to adjust your recommendations to what you actually want. And that is a mind change in my way of thinking how these kind of technologies should be done. I don't think that's too far out, actually.
I don't think people realize, the exponential progress that is happening in AI, and just looking back a couple of years and then seeing, how everything is moving multimodal, different types of data sets, multitask, general models increasing very, very rapidly. Not the least the GPT and ChatGPT and all the other Google, I get really annoyed with people saying that OpenAI will take over the search space. Like Google is not working in this area.
It's comparing cars to bicycles.
Yes.
But
Google has, so many different models doing exactly the same thing, not the least Lambda that, someone claimed to be conscious. But the difference is that Google is not publishing them. Yeah. And of course they have even more. We don't even know what they have, but it would be stupid to think that they don't have. And of course they have, huge advances here as well.
Yeah, sure.
And of course it would be a super big thing. But it will really, as you say, change much more than people think.
But it's an exciting time to be alive. Actually.
But it is. And if you did understand the exponential thing, I think that's what people are missing. If you do understand how exponential means, what exponential progress means, and that.
So are you in the singularity camp?
That will be a point for sure.
Okay.
Right?
Are you?
I'm not sure. I haven't decided yet.
What do you mean with singularity, though, by the way?
Right. Okay. But where sort of humans become surpassed by some AI and irrelevant.
But we already are in so many fields, right? And the number of tasks that we are being surpassed is just increasing faster and faster.
Yeah.
So I think we need
but define it absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, actually, the singularity needs to be defined sharper. We are talking about sentient. We're talking about conscious. We are talking about the point when it starts learning to learn for itself in its own pace, and you get this hyper extreme.
And perhaps not go there, but just with Anders' exponential change, that sort of is a singularity sort of framing.
Just to say, like ChatGPT, it can answer basically any question about any topic. Not necessarily better than a super expert in a small field, but tell me one person that can answer the questions in any field like ChatGPT can. Or tell me any person that can translate like a Google Translate can in any kind of language to any other kind of language. No one can. So, I mean, there are so many tasks that are getting surpassed, that AI is surpassing humans. I think, if we just keep this discussion a bit short and think about ChatGPT, which is really cool with that, is the ability for it to program, as you started speaking about, to generate code. And it's not hard to imagine the point where it can actually be part of a system that is improving itself. That is, potentially moving into the proper kind of...
But I definitely see a case where you would have these automatic error bug reporting, where you say that you have the trace from an exception feeding back into the system.
Just imagine,
definitely realize...
A crash happens, you have a stack trace. Now, today you have a human looking at it. It could be using ChatGPT already today to search for this problem and say, what should the fix be? It will provide a perfect fix and then put it in place. If you just remove the human in that, you have a self...
And it probably can do that already now. It's just an engineering problem of implementing
because what you're
that is singularity.
Because what happens is, because in some ways, when you combine ChatGPT with the system that allows it to fix yourself and improve yourself, and that goes out of hand, and it has all this power in terms of computation to start making suggestions to itself how it should improve.
So that's removing humans from it. That's removing the human to have control. That's at least, I think, a good definition of singularity when you lose control. But that is not that far off.
Right, but it's...
If no one is thinking about this.
I could argue that the PID system is a little bit similar. Like the PID, classical
control theory.
Exactly, engineering system where you have that
PID things.
Exactly, where you would have differential equations that can control for changes in the physical system, and it can adjust the input in order to fix the output.
But it can't improve itself that way.
Anyway, I think that's a good that's a good cliffhanger. And then I realized, Anders, to wrap this conversation up, we have talked about when, right? We asked for a number. What's your number? Are you a 2029 guy or are you a 2050 guy?
Are we still at the singularity?
Yeah. Show us.
So Ray Kurzweil says 29.
Something that I actually was thinking that we maybe should talk about was actually the conference that I part of organizing in Gothenburg.
Let's go there. Let's end up on this.
But actually,
what's next? That will be the question on what's next.
No, but we had the talk about a guy making a keynote last year that was actually talking about that, and they had made a statistical estimation of a distribution for that year, where it had huge tails. Like it was all the way from 10 years in the future to 500 years in the future. And I think the mean was distributed at something like 50 years in the future.
For singularity?
Yes.
But, I've seen some numbers on that. It was 50 years, I think 10 years ago. I think Ray Kurzweil, has been tracking this as well. It's been moving closer and closer. I think it's under 19 or 2040 now. I think it's close to 2030.
Oh, right.
So it's been moving quickly.
It's this whole exponentiality. To if we measure it with
exponential change is hard for humans.
So if we measure how long it will be with the current rate of evolution, 100 years, 50 years, but then we have a really hard time understanding. But the speed doubled next year.
Josef, what's next in your life? What's happening professionally, privately, in coming weeks or months?
Yeah, so I have to put this on a realistic topic. I think so. I sort of have a feeling that the economy that we're going into right now is completely unknown in a sense that we haven't really realized before. Right. I mean, inflation being this big in an economy where people are this indebted is could go anywhere.
And you having a financial background as well, so that's interesting to hear.
Yeah, and you could be an optimist and say that this is just it will be fixed and so on, but you can also be a realist or a pessimist saying that this could go way, way down. And so as an entrepreneur and as a manager of a company, I would say that my prime focus right now is to live through this year in order to make, prudent decisions of how to manage my company.
Right. Interesting.
That's... It's sort of the feeling I have right now.
It's a really good ending.
No,
but I think we need to realize that we're
it is
going
tough
into
times. It can be worse than we think, right?
Yeah, it could be a lot worse than we think.
But
Victor, what do you? Sorry.
Yeah, maybe then to comment on that. Like,
there's also what was the comeback?
Yeah, the comeback.
20 years in a recession.
No, but like a company like ours with a lot of experts, of course, and having this business model and consultancy as the core business, also have an opportunity here to create other values, right? Moving more into products or joint ventures or whatever it might be. So I see and I hope that we dare to move closer to those areas of the business, as well as, I don't like coming back to this public sector. Like the public sector is not gonna go in the grave, right? It needs maybe AI more than ever in one way.
Right.
This is also to understanding that some part of the economy, so to speak, never stops turning. I mean, like public sector is a good example. Healthcare, we're always going to need this. So let's focus on,
Yeah. Yes, I think that may be a focus for us to.
So basically, what we're saying, given the economy that we're having and the inflation that we're seeing, and companies will have a downtake in potential revenue, we need more AI than ever. And we need more Modulai than ever.
Yeah,
no, but be more efficient. I mean,
be more efficient will be key.
Definitely.
And you need to have the courage to still invest, right? To do this transformation. Otherwise, you will not be able to survive.
You need to spend money to make money.
Right. Cool. Victor, anyone that you would recommend to this podcast? Someone that you would like to listen to potentially for us to interrogate?
Interrogate, yes.
Oh, that's a really tricky question. I think I might need some help from you, Josef.
Has Daniel been here? An hotel Daniel?
Yes, right. I'm not sure.
I wasn't here at least. That from Microsoft, right?
No.
An hotel, yeah.
An hotel.
Yeah. The Cognic. They changed the name right now.
Oh, yeah. I think he has, but I'm not sure. But okay, let's add him anyway to the list here.
I don't think he has.
Yeah.
And you also seem to love Elon Musk. Elon, maybe.
What?
Let's bring Elon. Let's bring Elon on the show. That's a good suggestion. Thank you for that.
Actually, we have lined up Tony Stark.
You're far too focused on the East Coast, of course.
Yeah.
As a Best Coast person, I would say that
we had a number of people from Gothenburg. I must say.
I don't.
So who from the Best Coast then?
No, but Daniel.
Daniel, of course. Okay. Now, yeah.
And also, the time has gone far too far ahead here, but I think it's high time for some after work. So it's with great pleasure and fun that I thank you very much for coming on this podcast. And
a lot of fun being here.
Thanks for you shooting shit with us. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Ciao.